Welcome to another episode of the PFF College Football Show. I'm your host, Max Chadwick, alongside Dalton Wasserman in studio right now. Dalton, we were on day 3 of the 2024 NFL Draft Show alongside the GOAT, Trevor Sycamore, yesterday. So you came obviously down from Chicago to Cincinnati to do that. Man, we had a blast on yesterday's show.
Oh, what a wild ride it was, right? Just 7 hours that felt like, honestly, it felt like 1 hour.
It did.
It just flowed so well, and the picks were flying in, and every team getting talent and filling needs, and even some surprising picks that we didn't expect, and just an entire roller coaster of really 3 days, man. I mean, starting with what probably you would say the second overall pick.
Yep.
You've just had a 3-day roller coaster, and now as far as turning our heads back towards college football, it's almost like, oh, Happy New Year. But
yeah.
Of course, getting ahead of the game with what we're looking at now, it's going to be a lot of talk about next year's prospects for us, so it's going to be a lot of fun moving forward, too.
So usually after the 2024 NFL Draft, I'm sure Trevor's doing this right now. Go home, talk to the family, talk to your friends. You haven't seen them in months probably. We could do that, or we could say fuck that and do a 2025 NFL mock draft. And I say we should do the latter right now. So we're doing a way too early 2025 NFL mock draft, a full first round. And Dalton, I was telling you this upstairs. This mock draft is so cool because every single team has their first round pick. Nobody has traded away their first round pick yet. Maybe we'll get a player trade down the line, but nobody's traded it yet. So we're going to talk about all 32 teams in this first round mock, which is very rare. Usually you have a few teams that have already traded their picks. We're doing all 32 teams right now, man. I'm pumped.
Yeah, it's a different dynamic when you don't. This year, you're past the Deshaun Watson trade. You're past the Russell Wilson trade, right? Teams, you don't have any teams that mortgage the future. Part of that, too, I think, is the depth of the quarterback class in 2024, right? If you needed a quarterback, there's really only one team that didn't come away with one, and they didn't force it early, and there was really no big trades to make. So, yeah, no, it's always better, I think, when you get to talk about all 32 teams, because realistically, at the beginning of the season, out of 32, there's probably only 3 or 4 that you really go, okay, they have 0 shot to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, it can turn quick, right? And to add pieces moving into 2025, there's several teams that we could project even better than they are right now in 25. And if they add another premier prospect, then you're talking about, okay, now things can turn. We saw it with the Texans last year. It can turn in one season if you pick the right guys in the draft. So being prepared ahead of time for next year is a really, really good asset in your pocket.
It absolutely is. So if you want to do your own mock draft, you can actually do that at pff.com/mock. We have 125 players in that database right now. Trevor Sycamore will add plenty more once he finally, has his time off that he very much deserves. He will add more players to the database, switch around the rankings a little bit. Dalton and I kind of put together a top 125 for you to use. You can find it right now at pff.com/mock and do a full 3-round mock draft if you want in 2025 for all the sickos out there like us. But we're going to do our own mock draft right now based off the Super Bowl, or the betting odds, I should say. So kind of the same order that you'll see in that mock draft simulator. So it's based off the betting odds, not how Dalton and I see the standings actually finishing out. But I think that's a good way to put it. So at number 1 is the Carolina Panthers. For the second straight year, they're the projected worst team in the league. Obviously, they had the traded pick away in the Bryce Young trade, which is why the Bears had the first pick this year. But they have the number 1 pick again in this year's draft, and they're going to go with our number 1 prospect, which also there's a big board on pff.com if you want to check out the big board. Our number 1 prospect is James Pierce Jr., the edge defender out of Tennessee. This pick makes a lot of sense, not only because he's the number 1 prospect on the big board, also because they traded away Brian Burns to the New York Giants. They needed another athletic edge rusher. That's exactly what James Pierce Jr. is, man. You see right there, 92.4 pass rushing grade, 21.9% pressure rate as well. He has done an amazing job as a pass rusher. Overall, the scariest part about that is that he's that good already, top 3 pass rusher in the country last year. He's still raw. He's winning off athleticism pretty much exclusively, and he's still dominating that much. So if you all of a sudden, you work on his technique, you get a little bit better as a run defender, a little bit stronger as a run defender, he could all of a sudden be unblockable, man. He's that good. So obviously the rawness is a negative in that, okay, he's got to develop. It's also a big positive because, like, dude, he's that good while also being that raw. So, yeah, I think James Pierce Jr. right now, you look at the betting odds on DraftKings Sportsbook, he is 20-1 to go number 1 overall. I am laying my rent on that, Dalton. I think that's great odds, but James Pierce Jr. I think is a pretty slam dunk number 1 pick for the Panthers, who need an edge defender, and he's a top player on the board.
No, I totally agree, and I think for me, especially this early in the process, you're talking about ceilings and floors. Like, what is the range of outcomes for James Pierce Jr., right? And to me, I look at his athleticism, even if it's a bit raw, and just how dominant he is with especially the speed rush and then counter inside moves and things like that. I think his floor is to be as good as Dallas Turner. Who went 17th overall the other night. Like, that's I think, the bottom end of the spectrum for James Pierce Jr. And again, like you said, number 1 overall, he should be much better than 20-1 there. He is the best pass rusher in the country. He might be the best player in the country this season. He's a freak of nature. His athletic talent is unreal. He will probably test as well at the combine next year as well as Turner. I think that's his floor, and if he gets any better than that, honestly, his potential is limitless. Moving ahead here to New England. This is, I find it funny that we've got several tackles. This was like a deep, deep tackle class, but the top-end talent next year is darn near as good, if not equal, right? And the Patriots, I find funny because the last 2 years to the draft, they've taken the approach of throwing a bunch of darts at their offensive line and seeing which ones stick and kind of playing the percentage game, right? And the one thing they're still missing is just that franchise tackle, right? So for New England here at number 2, I'm taking the left tackle from LSU, Will Campbell, who's had just a spectacular first couple seasons in Baton Rouge, an 82.2 overall grade across those first 2 seasons. In the SEC, when you watch Campbell, he's a little high in his stance, right? He doesn't have the best lower body strength right now, but you still look at him and he's so fundamentally sound, and the only guys that really gave him problems are guys of the caliber of Jared Verse and Dallas Turner, like elite first-round pick type guys. And you're talking about as a true freshman and a true sophomore. I could be wrong in this, but I'm pretty sure I heard he was the first ever true freshman left tackle to start for LSU, which is mind-blowing in its own right. And you had, what was it about the jersey patch, and he's essentially the captain or something?
Yeah, so they give out the number 7. I think it's the best player from Louisiana, so maybe Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors weren't eligible for that. But that's you look at the past number 7s at LSU, we got Patrick Peterson, Tyrann Mathieu, like legendary players. He, as an offensive tackle, can't actually wear number 7, but he's got the patch of number 7 because they gave that number to him. So just shows how respected he is in that program as well.
He's incredibly consistent. He's incredibly balanced in his game, in the pass game and the run game. It doesn't lean like when you have like an Olufashinu, who's a great pass blocker and a mediocre run blocker. Campbell does both well. You've made the argument that he could be OT2 in this class behind Joe Alt.
Yeah.
Next year, there's 2 tackles at the top here who are going to be fighting for that first spot, but New England gets their franchise left tackle and Will Campbell at number 2.
I think that's a slam dunk as well. Also, want to shout this out if you're a betting man, 60-1 odds. 60-1 odds to go number 1.
He could go first, absolutely. We've seen, it's been 11 or 12 years since we've seen
Eric Fisher was the last one. Yeah,
we could see that with the way this draft is lighter on quarterbacks next season. You could absolutely see left tackle, edge defender, something like that go first overall.
So just to remind you guys, our number 1 overall pick has 20-1 odds to go number 1 overall next year. Our number 2 overall pick has 60-1 odds to go number 1 overall next year. Don, it's going to be dangerous how much money I'm placing on those two, man. I understand I'm not going to see a return on that investment for another year, but dude, that is insanity to me right now.
60-1, you could put $10 on it.
And get $600 back. Seriously. Like, that's insane, dude. So yeah, absolutely. Will Campbell and James Pierce Jr. odds, please, if you're a betting man, please do it because it's going to be a good future investment, I think, long term. At number 3, a guy who actually, I couldn't find the odds online. I only saw a screenshot of the odds, but I didn't see him on the odds at all. And Denver Broncos here at number 3, Mason Graham, defensive tackle out of Michigan, who we have as the number 2 overall prospect, actually, on our big board. And I think the Broncos, they just need a true difference maker on that defensive line. Now, they took Jonah Ellis, the edge defender, this year on day 2, but this past season, their defensive line, meaning their edge defenders and interior defensive linemen as a unit, were the 5th lowest graded in the league. You got a guy like Mason Graham, who's an absolute superstar, one of only 2 D tackles in the country with top 10 grades as a pass rusher and as a run defender. The only other one was Tavondre Sweat, who I think was the best D tackle in the league, nation, I should say, this past year. I think Mason Graham could rival Jalen Carter and Quinn Williams as a prospect, honestly. He is such a complete player, man. Unbelievable motor, agility, power, everything. The way he moves is crazy. In fact, I keep saying this. when I was watching his tape initially, I was like, okay, this guy's got to be undersized. Like, he is moving way too fast out there. And a guy like Howard Cross, we'll get into a little bit, moves great too, but he is undersized. Like, all right, maybe Mason Graham's like that as well. Looked it up. He's 6'3", 318. He's got great size for the position as well. So really, he's just an alien. Mason Graham, I think Trevor Sikkema, our lead draft analyst, he might have Mason Graham number 1 overall on the big board. We don't personally for us right now because we think James Pierce Jr. has maybe a little bit of a higher ceiling and obviously plays a more valuable position. But as a pure football player, yeah, Mason Graham might be the best football player in the 2025 draft.
You know, the thought I just had when you were talking about him now is like this year, for all the receiver talent, quarterback talent, and everything like that, I thought Joe Alt was the safest pick in the draft. I think next year it might be Mason Graham.
Might be, yeah.
Look, national title team, best defense in the country by a mile. He was their best player. He was actually, for as much as they have all the huge names, J.J. McCarthy and Roman Wilson, Blake Corum, somebody we're about to get to next, Mason Graham was their best player, right? The 90 overall grade, the absolute dominance against Alabama and Washington in the playoff. I'm with you. I think he's in for a Quinn Williams type of season.
Yeah.
I really do. What he did at Alabama his final season, just so easy to project, right? He's got finesse, he's got power, he stops the run, he's a major disruption as a pass rusher. Like, you know, him bothering Michael Penix in the national title game up the middle tells you all you need to know. Like, if you've got a pocket quarterback like that, Mason Graham's going to be a problem for you. So, no, I mean, and looking at it again, how much talent Michigan has returning is crazy. And I'm going to get to another one with the next pick. Tennessee Titans projected to pick 4th right now. And I don't hate their cornerback room as it is. They traded for L'Jarius Sneed. They've got Chidobe Awuzie on kind of a short-term contract. They're trying to find corners. Roger McCreary's like decent, not great, but let's get him a prime-time corner. Let's get him the best cornerback in the country on the best defense in the country. National title winner again from Michigan, Will Johnson. Man, I mean, just you talk about shadowing guys like Marvin Harrison and Rome Odunze. Those are the only types of guys that can compete with Will Johnson. Otherwise, it's lights out, man. 86.3 single coverage grade over the last 2 years. The selling point for me with Johnson is you look at his grades in single coverage, you look at his grades in man coverage, right? And especially press man, they run a good amount of cover 1 over there when they're blitzing at Michigan. And it's just lights out. Still, it's numbers on par, like in there with this year's guys like Quinyon Mitchell and Kool-Aid McKinstry and the elite guys in this year's class. Will Johnson's done it as a freshman and a sophomore. In high pressure situations where everybody's looking at Michigan to win a national title, and he went out and did it. Like, he was winning the battle against Rome Odunze in the national title game as a sophomore. And any other year other than this year, Odunze would be the best receiver in the country. So Will Johnson, he can play in man, he can play off in zone. They run a lot of cover 3. He is the complete package at corner, and I think any team, you could put him on almost any team in the league, and you wouldn't complain about fit because he's so good. But Tennessee getting a dynamic guy like that you could shadow him, you could play him in zone, you could do whatever you want with him. You're talking about a major addition to their defense.
He when I first watched him as a true freshman, he gave me like Patrick Surtain vibes a little bit, man. Like 6'2", 205, and just Surtain coming out of Alabama, the whole thing with him was like his technique and footwork were just stellar. Will Johnson's like that as well, and I think he's a really good athlete too. Great ball skills. I mean, he makes some unbelievable plays in the football the last couple of years. So yeah, he's currently CB1 in the draft, and I think he is going to be a really, really interesting player as well for next year's draft as one of the top corners. I think he would have been the top corner this year if he was eligible for it. All right, at number 5, we got the New York Giants. So no quarterbacks yet come off the board. That's changing right now in Carson Beck, the quarterback out of Georgia, who actually could have been in the 2024 NFL draft if he decided to come out. Maybe would have been competing with J.J. McCarthy as maybe like QB. What was it, 5, I guess, actually, in the
I think in that, well, I guess McCarthy ended up 5. A lot of people had McCarthy 4. I had Penix 4. It just I didn't think he would go there, but no, he would be in that second group this year for
he
sure.
Could have been a first-round pick, I think. Like there's a world. He probably would have gone above Bo Nix.
If we have this scenario, I think the Raiders probably would have taken him.
I even think Denver would have taken him over Bo. I think he's a guy that Sean Payton. He's even like better than Bo in the same. They play very similarly, but I think he does it better than
Peyton.
Bo.
By all accounts, Peyton loved Bo.
Yeah.
Loved him. He said he had as much conviction about Bo as he did about Patrick Mahomes. He might have just taken Bo regardless, but he wouldn't have, I don't think Beck would have got by, even though his Georgia teammate Brock Bowers was sitting there. I don't think Beck would have got by 13 to the Raiders, but then you'd be talking 7 of the first 13 picks at quarterback. That's
I heard that quote, I think, came from Sean Payton. I also heard the same exact thing from Zach Tantillo, was telling us that the same thing upstairs, that his comp for Bo Nix is Patrick Mahomes.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure it was. I'm sure his was like Mahomes in Montana.
Yeah, exactly. But Carson Beck, going back to him, 91.5 grade this past year, 4th among all quarterbacks in the nation. The only ones who were better than him were all Heisman finalists as well. So, in Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, and Michael Penix Jr. So Carson Beck, by all accounts, is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Precise quarterback, timing, accuracy. That's why I think he would fit in Denver, honestly, with what Sean Payton values at that position. And I just think he's got a good arm as well. Not a great runner. And obviously he's not, we talk about this 2025 quarterback class. Going into last year, we were freaking out over Caleb Williams. We were freaking out over Drake May. We're not freaking out over Carson Beck. I think actually on our big board, he's the number 11 overall prospect. So that's low for the top quarterback. So it is the top end talent at quarterback's a little lacking than it is in previous years. But I still think Carson Beck is a guy the Giants would want here. With Daniel Jones kind of seemingly on his last legs in New York, and you brought it up. I mean, if they're picking 5th overall like they are in here, they might have a whole new coaching staff, general manager, everything. They might be starting over, and I think starting over with Carson Beck makes some sense here.
I mean, the Giants are tough to project right now because they did pick up several really nice weapons yesterday, right? Or in the last couple of days, Malik Neighbors and Tyrone Tracy and Theo Johnson. They're trying to add weapons. Even if they're going to start Daniel Jones this year and maybe beyond, they just had to make that situation more amenable to success, right? But what sold it for me with Beck was when Brock Bowers went down with his injury and he missed 3 games and he kind of played hurt the rest of the year after that, Carson Beck stepped up his game. He was better than ever in the Kentucky game, in the Tennessee game, even when Bowers was still, I don't know if he missed the Missouri game, but Carson Beck was so good without his best player, because I think in the first half of the year, everybody was like, okay, he's got Bowers, and he's got like Edwards and Milton, and they're stacked, and they're Georgia, and this and that. And then Bowers gets hurt, and everybody's like, wait, whoa, because they have to play the toughest stretch of their schedule right now. And Carson Beck went out there, I think the first game was against Kentucky, and he just tore him to shreds. I mean, over the middle, deep shots, his intermediate accuracy, I love it. He's wicked accurate. Yeah. That's the selling point for me with Carson Beck. He's poised and he's accurate. I think there are some of the same traits as, say, a Bo Nix, right? He's less mobile. Carson Beck's not. Yeah. He's more of a true pocket passer. But to succeed when your best player is down told me a lot, and keep Georgia in the national title picture. He really didn't have even a mediocre game until the Alabama game, and Alabama was a top 3 defense in the country. We were arguing that as the best secondary in the country, right? So Beck, no, I think he's easy to project. I think he is a first-round pick. I'm not even entirely sure he's going to be QB1 next year. We're getting into that just because he doesn't have prime athleticism, and that's something that just plays in big time now, right? Like, you look at the top 3 guys that we had this year, and all 3 of them are primetime athletes. Yeah. Man. And it's just, it makes a difference when you have Mahomes and Allen and Jackson and Hurts and these guys who are just freak athletes at that position. It's the scariest thing in football for a defensive coordinator. So I don't know for sure that Beck will be the first one off the board, but he's the safest to project right now. Is there any chance Carson Beck has a bad season?
I don't think so at all.
No way.
Yeah, no way.
He's too accurate. It's just too easy to see. So I like the pick there for the Giants. Reset your salary cap. You're paying Brian Burns now a ton of money, right? You're paying Dexter Lawrence a ton of money. I don't know, did Andrew Thomas get an extension? I think
yes, he did. Yeah, he did.
They got a lot of money in a lot of other spots. So I mean, if you get cheaper at quarterback and start filling out the rest, I like it, and then they can start working on moving towards the top of their division. Staying in that division, number 6, got the Washington Commanders here. I thought they had an A+. For me, an A+ draft. I think we gave it an A, maybe.
I think so. Not an A+.
I know there's people in the building that don't like Jaden Daniels as much as I do, but love it. Jaden Daniels, Johnny Newton's an absolute steal in the second round. Mike Sainris still's a steal at number 50. I like Ben Sinnott. I like Brandon. They're doing a lot of things right. But similar to New England, they're kind of throwing darts at the offensive line wall, right? Quantity, which is cool, because if you take a ton of them and half of them work, well, you're realistically looking for 5, right? But I'm a fan of them too, like New England getting a franchise left tackle. They've got movable pieces. Sam Cosme's played a lot of spots Brandon Coleman can play a lot of spots. They might try him at left tackle this year, but we'll see. He's got a ton of experience at guard, kind of versatile if nothing else. Let's go to Texas. Let's get Kelvin Banks Jr. here with the 6th overall pick, the left tackle down there. Excellent pass protector. Just maybe possibly a better pure pass protector than Will Campbell is.
Yeah.
Not as great in the run game, more of a zone runner who's improving as we go along. In Texas, they are going to run the living hell out of the football still. They have C.J. Baxter and Jaden Blue coming right up behind Brooks and all these other great backs that they've had. That's like RBU right now down there at Texas. But Banks is improving as a zone run blocker. He's a fantastic pass protector. This year, 86.8 pass blocking grade, 1 sack and 1 quarterback hit allowed all season. And, sometimes Sark kind of, props up the offense. It's not always true pass set, but Banks is just so talented, man.
Yeah.
He's so I think you can look at Banks the same way we've looked at Fashanu pretty much the whole year.
Yeah.
And if he gets better in the run game, then you're really onto something.
What was his Alabama? We were talking about it upstairs. What was his Alabama pass blocking grade? It was like an 84 or something like that?
It was around there,
Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell, he was clamping him down.
It may be the same thing as this year's draft, where Alt is the best prospect, but there's some thought that Fashanu was kind of the best pure pass protector.
Banks might be.
Banks very well could be.
I agree with that. And the thing about him that is different with Fashanu, and why I think that it would have been in my all-eligible rankings, I had Joe Alt number 1, then I had Will Campbell number 2, Kelvin Banks Jr. number 3. Difference between Banks and Fashanu, both elite pass blockers, you're right. Banks is inconsistent as a run blocker, but he also has flashes of dominance, dude. My favorite stat I found of his was, so in our grading system, he has 12 big-time blocks, which big-time blocks, think of them as big-time throws, basically. Highest graded blocks in our system. 12 big-time blocks. Only FBS tackle that had more than that was Talisa Fuanga. And all we talked about was how dominant of a run blocker Talisa Fuanga is. Now, Fuanga is way more consistent as a run blocker, but Banks, it's not like it's like a Fashanu thing where it's like Fashanu was just bad or below average as a run blocker. Banks is just inconsistent, but he has the capability of being dominant, man. So if he gets a little more consistent in that area, I think he will be above Will Campbell, I think he's got better tools than Will Campbell, and the pass blocking is on par with him. And I know Will Campbell's more consistent as a run blocker, but Banks has some flashes of really unbelievable plays as a run blocker. So, yeah, I think that's the difference between him and Fashanu right now, and why I think, Kelvin Banks Jr. has a great chance to be OT1 next year.
Absolutely. He moves different than every other tackle in this class.
Well, he's a 5-star recruit, Dalton. That makes sense.
What it is. If you can move different, you get 5 stars. That's exactly what it is.
And it works out.
I find it funny here too. I was just looking through this and I was like, oh, we've got there's a heavy lean towards our first 7, and I guess you'll lean into 7 here. Out of our first 7 guys, there are 5 SEC players and 2 Michigan players.
Yep. That makes complete sense.
It feels like an exclusive club here at the top.
It does. And at number 7, this guy, I'm actually shocked he wasn't a 5-star player, the way he is built and moves. But Deion Walker, defensive tackle out of Kentucky, going to the Arizona Cardinals here at number 7. Alien. That is the only way to describe Deion Walker. We were waxing poetic about him yesterday on the show, and we've been waxing poetic about him for a while now, and be ready for us to do the same the rest of the season, because he is ridiculous. 6'6", 348 pounds. You can just see in that picture how much of a massive human being he is. So, again, like I always say, you hear that size, and just based off the defensive tackles who've been like that size before, you think, okay, great run defender. He's going to eat double teams. Not going to do much as a pass rusher. He led the nation in pressures this past year. He had 51 pressures. That led all FBSD tackles, man. And, again, you hear that size, and you think, okay, well, how he wins is just probably ragdolling offensive linemen, and he can do that. But I think his biggest weakness right now is that he's not using his power enough. He's juking out interior offensive linemen. He's using his agility. He has a spin move that I just, at 6'6", 348, that you should not be able to even have a spin move in your arsenal. He not only has one, he has a very good one. I think Deion Walker, there's still some things he can get better at, man. He's still such a productive player. We talked about Mason Graham before. Mason Graham's a complete football player. Deion Walker's still kind of scratching his potential, and he still was incredibly productive. So he's a lot like James Pierce Jr. in a lot of ways, where it's just like, dude, he's this good in the SEC as a true sophomore, and there's still so many ways he can get better. I would not be surprised if he's taken above Mason Graham. Now, I like Mason Graham more right now because he just is so complete. But Deion Walker, that ceiling, man, I could see some teams being like, listen, if you believe in your defensive line coach, you're like, get me that guy. Because Mason Graham, it's like, okay, he's a safer player. Deion Walker's like, no, that's the guy that is a true unicorn. So Arizona, they didn't take any D tackles in the 2024 NFL draft, any true ones, depending on what you think Darius Robinson is. And I think that was one of their biggest needs. So I think Deion Walker, value-wise, is a great pick here, and need-wise, I think it's a home run for the Cardinals as well.
Let's assume they think Robinson is an edge player, and this pick makes a boatload of sense.
Even if he plays D-tackle, you still need another one.
Well, they're just moving guys all over the place.
Yeah.
That's what Jonathan Gannon really likes to do. That is just move his D lineman around. He used to do it with Fletcher Cox a lot, Jalen Carter. No, well, he didn't have Jalen Carter, but they just had different guys who would move around the line, 4-man front, 5-man front, mix it up. No, Walker, he's built like an offensive tackle. He plays like an edge player, and he's in the A-gap. I don't really know how to explain it, and productive in both aspects, right? 80-plus grades in run D and pass rush. Like, this dude, he could probably stand to lose a few pounds, but like his footwork and his hand usage and his arsenal is like a primetime edge player, and he's using it on like centers. Mm-hmm. It's nuts. Like, I don't know how you block him. Like, we're probably going to preview at least one Kentucky game during the season just to check in on him.
Yeah.
Because he's a freak of absolute. He is problem number one when you play Kentucky this season. And if he adds like that level of power, like somehow he's 350 and he could be stronger as a player, it is the same thing as Pierce. They could be the two best players in this draft. They could. Number 8, we got the Minnesota Vikings projected at number 8. I don't know what their roster that I feel that great about that. The odds don't like the Vikings at all.
You don't have Jason McCarthy.
I know, and even it's like, for me, it was the one situation he could go to and actually succeed.
I
right
agree.
away.
I think 8 is pretty high.
Didn't they win 9 games or 8 games with like maybe that many quarterbacks too, like Josh Dobbs and Nick Mullins, and we're winning games with I don't know how the Vikings could be the 8th worst team in football. But anyway, we'll do it because
based on the betting odds,
betting odds, I guess, say the Vikings are a lot worse than we think they are. But a couple of nice picks in the mid-rounds the last 2 years at corner. Brian Flores likes his big physical corners, right? He got Mekhi Blackmon last year, who was really good as a rookie. Kyrie Jackson, who we had early yesterday, taken from Oregon, who some of us thought would go a lot sooner than that, and they got him in the 4th. But we're getting a primetime corner. Let's get like the number 1 corner to like lead that group and just be like that dude you're talking about, like the Sauce Gardners and the Patrick Surtains and guys like that. Let's go to Notre Dame, our first non-SEC or Michigan pick. We're going to Notre Dame for Benjamin Morrison. Top tier guy, just probably the second best corner, probably the physical talent, maybe to be the best corner in this draft if Will Johnson were to slip a little bit. 84.6 coverage grade last season, 8 pass breakups, 3 interceptions. Cam Hart was drafted out of Notre Dame yesterday, and Morrison's way better than that. Like, he's really, really good, and they play top tier offenses, Ohio State, USC, right? And he just lights out. He was another one. You had the stat on the big receivers, including Marvin Harrison, right?
Yeah.
No, he played Marvin Harrison twice and just shut him down.
Yeah, so the stat was, what was it? How many targets was it? 7 targets against Marvin Harrison Jr. Over the last 2 years. So keep in mind, Harrison was a sophomore junior. Morrison was a freshman sophomore. On those 7 targets, he allowed 2 catches and had 3 forced incompletions. So more forced incompletions than allowed catches against the number 1 receiver prospect maybe of the last decade.
That right there, those 7 targets probably alone get him in the top 50.
Yeah.
Get him drafted in the top 50. But no, he's got all the potential in the world. He's a young kid. His coverage grades over the last 2 years are like, if Will Johnson and like Quinyon Mitchell are here, like Benjamin Morrison's like just like a couple of points below him. I think he's pretty clearly the second best corner in this draft.
Yeah.
And a absolutely loaded Notre Dame defense that we're going to talk about probably almost every week. He's the best player on it. And there's a boatload of talent in the front 7, on the back end, like everywhere. This Notre Dame defense is something to watch this year. It's going to be awesome.
So you talk about Will Johnson's true freshman year, how elite he was. Benjamin Morrison was the same way. He actually, in that year, he had 6 interceptions, which were tied for the most in the Power 5, and he had a 29.2 passer rating allowed, which was 3rd in the Power 5 that year. This past year, he had 13 forced incompletions, so tied for 8th in the Power 5 this past year in forced incompletions. I think the one thing that is an issue with him is that he's a pretty bad tackler right now. But if that's your biggest issue as a top cornerback prospect, it's like, we can live with that, man.
We have corners in the league who
we just can't tackle. Yeah, it's like, dude, we can live with that. So Benjamin Morrison, again, it sounds weird considering how high we are on Mason Graham, how high we are on Will Johnson, and how high we are on Will Campbell. They're 1A, 1B, and how high we're going to talk about Luther Burden in a little bit. They're all 1A, 1B because there's another guy right behind them who's just that as good as well. So again, Will Johnson, I think, will be the wire-to-wire CB1, but if he slips up a little bit, Benjamin Morrison's on his heels, dude. Like I think it's that close between the two of them. And we got a couple more that we're going to talk about in terms of cornerback class. But at number 9 is the Las Vegas Raiders. They were the only team in the first round that did not take a quarterback. And in fact, they didn't take a quarterback the entire draft. I thought maybe Spencer Rattler would be an option for them later on. They were like, no, we're good. We got Gardner Minshew, we got Aiden O'Connell. We'll just roll with that this year. That's probably not a long-term fix. So at number 9, they're going to go with their second-ranked quarterback in the draft, and actually the betting favorite to go number 1 overall. And not only the betting favorite, Dalton, plus 100, which is insane.
50-50 feels a little high, and I love Shedeur more than most people.
What was Caleb's odds last year? It must have been like that too.
It probably was around there, and that was more well-deserved. Like, everybody knew Caleb was going 1. I obviously tried to fight against it, but at least make an argument out of it. But, like, Shedeur, this implies that Shedeur is, like, 50-50 to go number 1.
And you know what that is, too? I think it's a little bit of, like, name recognition. People want to bet on Shedeur Sanders. Well, I think it's a little bit of that, too.
And teams are more likely to trade up for quarterbacks, right? So it's not just about, okay, does the worst team in football need a quarterback, right? Like, let's just say it's Carolina or it's Denver.
No,
like,
they can trade.
These teams
I can see them trading for,
Right. Like, then you're talking about you're in a Bears situation where let's say like Denver's the worst team in the league, okay? And Bo Nix, they've clearly committed to Bo Nix.
Yeah.
Do they just do what the Bears do and take the haul and move down? Because I think this is a draft you could do that. Yeah. For as much as we love Pierce, there may not be, especially if it's defensive players and trench players and things like that.
No, Pierce is not worth two or three first-round picks.
Well, and there's not a slam dunk number 1 prospect.
Yeah.
But the trade up for quarterbacks is different than any other position, right? So then you're talking about teams. Right. Let's say if the Giants are picking 5th and they really want Shedeur,
or the Raiders,
or the Raiders, and it crashes and they're in a reachable spot to get to the number 1 pick. Look, the Panthers did it from what, number
9?
9 it was. I mean. And that took an absolute.
That's what the Raiders are right now, too. It works out perfect.
Oh, well, this plus 100 makes sense now all of a sudden. But no, I mean, I love Shedeur as much as anybody in this class.
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring that up just to be like, it's kind of crazy the betting odds right now. But to talk about Shedeur and how good he is, he's an advanced processor, man. So smart. He actually, so the problem with Colorado is obviously protecting him. But when they do protect him, he's one of the best in the country. This past season, 92.9 passing grade from a clean pocket. The only 2 players in college football who had a higher passing grade from a clean pocket were the number 1 overall pick and the number 2 overall pick, Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. That's it. Shedeur Sanders was number 3 right behind them. And clean pocket passing grade is one of the most stable metrics we have right now. So we can expect more of the same for Shedeur Sanders as well. So I'm a big fan of him. I think he's a really, really great quarterback prospect. He really kept Colorado afloat when they were struggling last year as well. I'm a huge fan of Shedeur Sanders, and I think he right now is the betting favorite to be the number 1 overall pick. I don't quite agree with that. And I don't think he even is QB1 right now, but I think it's a pretty clear top 2 quarterbacks of Carson Beck, Shedeur Sanders, and then everyone else right now.
I totally agree with that, and Shedeur's going to be fun. If his year goes, maybe they win a few more games, bowl game, or I don't know, if they hit the jackpot, playoff contender, the Big 12 is going to be a lot of fun this year. He's going to be a fun one to analyze all year because if the clean pocket stuff holds and yet they have a high pressure rate, the thing that I think we have to communicate more is everybody thinks, well, how great is he under pressure? Can he handle when a guy's in his face and this and that? And I go, the solution to this and why clean pocket stuff is the most stable indicator going forward, the goal should be to have pressure less often.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you can have guys, like I can remember back in the day, like, let's take Drew Brees and Deshaun Watson, like right around 2018 or so, right? And both of them, spectacular grades in clean pockets, right? And whatever they were in pressure, I don't care. It doesn't matter. But when you got Drew Brees getting pressured 20% of the time and Deshaun Watson 40 to 45, Well, what you're trying to do is create more opportunities to work in clean pockets, right? Just tilt the volume towards the clean pocket stuff. If you look at grades under pressure, nobody's is good every year except like Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Josh Allen breaks the rules because he's just a freaking.
Look at Caleb was the highest graded as a Heisman Trophy winner, and then he was like one of the lowest graded this past season.
He went from like a 90 to a 30 or whatever it was.
It's so
right?
volatile.
It's volatile because what you should be trying to do is just improve your pass protection, right? Yeah. And just now, instead of only 60% of the time, I have a quarterback that grades a 92.9 or whatever 92.9. Mm-hmm. Now I get it 80% of the time, right? That's what you're trying to fix. So it's going to be really interesting to see if Colorado in the transfer portal can fix themselves in the trenches, add some sort of dynamic in the running game to take it. Because people are like, well, Shedeur takes too many sacks. And I go, what do you want him to do? Do you want him to throw interceptions? Because I only think he threw 3 interceptions last year.
Yeah, very high turnover. One of the best turnover-worthy players in the country.
So I keep talking about Jaden Daniels and the best turnover-worthy play rate in the Power 5, right? I think it was 1.6% for his career. Shedeur was like right at that number last year. So I go, he doesn't beat himself, and he's great in a clean pocket. Get him clean pockets, and he could put up numbers, man. They have weapons for days.
You know who got the number 1 offensive tackle recruit in the country coming in? Colorado.
Jordan Seaton.
Jordan Seaton. So I know you don't love recruiting, but maybe that's a
5-star. 5 stars.
Listen, 5-star. It is true freshman offensive lineman. Unless you're Kelvin Banks or Will Campbell, it is dangerous to put those guys out there because it is one of the hardest things to transition. But maybe Jordan Seaton's that good.
Take the gamble. It couldn't be any worse than they were last year. But getting him more clean pockets. Could get him taken first. Could get him in the Heisman race.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, want to go to number 10 now?
Number 10, Seattle. All right, gotta love the Byron Murphy pick in Seattle. The perfect pick for them. Beef up the inside, Byron Murphy, Leonard Williams. Now I need an edge player. It's a rough edge group. I like Boye Mafe. He's good. He's not a primetime guy. I need a primetime guy. This is your guy here at 10 for Seattle. Nick Scourton on the edge for Texas A&M. Played Purdue previously, transferred to A&M this year. Love the fit for him with Mike Elko coming in there because Elko had some monster D linemen at Duke, right? But 90.9 pass rush grade. 21.2% pass rush win rate, both inside the top 10 in the country among edge players this year. You were showing me some clips earlier. He's a spin move extraordinaire. He'll use it on tackles. He'll use it on centers. He'll probably use it on running backs if you try. He's a spin move extraordinaire. Like you're talking, probably uses it as much as Dwight Freeney and Aiden Hutchinson and Will McDonald and these other guys we've seen. But no, he's really, really good. He's got the perfect build for whatever you want on the edge. If you want him to stand up, if you want him down in a 3-point stance, he'll line up anywhere from the A gap to the wide 9. Doesn't matter. But I can tell you something right now. We're about to see like 400 spin moves from Nick Scourton. And if he gets to use it in Seattle, that just completes their line. Because I look at them, if they're using an even front, right? You've got Mafe, Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, and Nick Scourton, they suddenly got a lot better on the D-line in a matter of 2 years because especially even their run defense, they just need the bodies, man. Like their run defense let them down the stretch the last 2 years. And anything that fills out their front 7 is good for their team.
Yeah, 6'4", 260. You mentioned that spin move. He's a big edge defender as well. And the thing between him and James Pierce Jr. is that he's a really good run defender. He had the 3rd most run defense stops among Power 5 edges this past year. He had 25 run defense stops. So I am so excited to see him, what he could do at Texas A&M in the SEC this year. I think he is pretty clearly, for now, edge 2. We'll get into a guy who's got a ridiculously high ceiling that just hasn't shown yet. Maybe he could be edge 2 or maybe an edge 1, man, just based on stuff that we were watching upstairs earlier. But Nick Scourton, pretty safe bet, I think, to be a first-round pick next year. All right, New Orleans at number 11. They're going with wide receiver 1, in my opinion, right now. Luther Burden III out of Missouri. Now, we keep talking about how it's not 1 and 2. It's 1A, 1B. Like for so many positions, wide receiver is another one, where it's him or Tetairoa McMillan, whatever flavor you want. You had a great stat, Dalton, that I am really happy you brought up because that makes this pick make even more sense for me. The Saints last year were the 2nd worst team in the NFL in terms of yards after the catch per reception. They averaged 4.5 yards after the catch per reception. 2nd worst in the league. Luther Burden III is going to fix that immediately. He has 725 yards after the catch last year, third among all receivers in the country. Really good after contact as well. Really good in contested situations. You hear all these yak stuff and you go, okay, is he like a Malachi Corley type player, or what are we talking about here? No, he goes up and gets it, man. He's a really athletic player. I think as a route runner, there's still more to be worked on with him. I think part of it is Missouri's not asking him to do a whole lot out there. It's not a diverse route tree for Luther Burden III, because quite frankly, they're just trying to get the ball in his hands. But I think he'd get a little bit better as a route runner. But other than that, man, he is a really, really good wide receiver prospect. And a lot of guys have gotten compared to Deebo Samuel. Like, I think it was unfairly attributed to Malachi Corley this past year. I never thought he deserved that. Luther Burden III is one of those guys that I think might deserve the Deebo Samuel comparison. So I like him a lot. And for New Orleans, who desperately needs guys to do stuff after the catch, because Chris Olave is not good after the catch at all. He does everything else amazingly, but it just doesn't really add anything after the catch. Luther Burden III is exactly what they need in that receiving corps.
Yeah, I totally agree. When you're talking about Burden and just what he would fix for them after the catch, I was wondering this after the catch thing with if Brock Bowers had fallen to the Saints at 14, could they have taken him as the greatest yak tight end we've ever seen?
Right.
It's just he's the yak demon, and Kirby Moore did such a good job. Just what are we getting at here? He's just such a young kid, and to come in there and he had 250 yards or so in his freshman season.
Yeah.
And just see the talent in this kid and make him the center of their offense. What an unbelievable job by Missouri, and Burden just. I think it is a debate as far as wide receiver one.
Yeah.
But it's for the Saints, it's just such a great fit. The fit with Olave to give the after the catch element to their offense. And he's explosive, man. He can make explosive plays. So I think a great pick here for the Saints. Staying in the NFC South, Tampa Bay. This year I thought now they drafted for need this year. Graham Barton, starting center immediately, right? I thought they could go best player available. If Chop Robinson was there, that might have been a thing. But, maybe Graham Barton was their best player available, right? Let's just take a talent swing here. We mentioned it yesterday with Trevor, and he would probably about freak out if this happened. Let's go with Travis Hunter from Colorado. Let's make the second pick out of Colorado in the top 12. Could be a number one corner. Could be a number one receiver.
Yeah.
We don't really know yet. 78.9 receiving grade last year. 74.7 coverage grade, so really good at both. Led the country in snaps despite missing 3 games. You got a guy who's just otherworldly talented. Probably, I'm sure in the return game it can work too. He's really, you look at his talent level, it's the closest thing we have today to his coach, Deion Sanders.
Yeah.
And it's just
get him a baseball jersey. Get him a bat, man. See what he can do in baseball diamond as well.
if he's the Ohtani of football, right?
Yeah, that's what I said. That's what I called him. Yeah.
I think what you have is just. I think he's a number one corner.
That's what I agree.
And probably a supplemental receiver. Although I think he only has 1 drop in 2 years in college as a receiver. As a slot receiver, he's nasty. So I think it's also harder to find great corners than great receivers, right? I think it's gonna be one of these things where I think he's drafted as a corner. Now the Bucs traded Carlton Davis. They don't, other than Jamel Dean, they're kind of trying to figure it out. I like their pick with Tyke Smith in the slot. So another outside guy, if I had Jamel Dean and Travis Hunter and Tyke Smith and Christian Izzy in his depth and things like that, cool. And or if they feel like he's a receiver, Mike Evans on a 2-year extension. Chris Godwin's kind of got a contract thing they've been battling it out for a couple of years now. Maybe they see him as a number one receiver, or just take the talent and figure it out later. Play him both ways. I don't know that he can play 1,500 snaps at an NFL level. Probably not. So you probably have to pick one primary position. But can we put anything past Travis Hunter right now?
No, we can't. We can't. So he's an alien, probably the biggest alien in this draft. And we just talked about Deion Walker, how ridiculous he is too. So I think that's great. I think got the Colts here at 13. So their biggest need entering the draft was a secondary, man. They needed help in corner. They needed help at safety. They didn't take a defensive back until the 5th round of the 2024 NFL draft. So I didn't love that from Indianapolis. So we're going to address the secondary right here and take the best safety on the board in Malachi Starks. Outstanding run defender, outstanding tackler, and he's awesome in coverage as well, and an elite athlete too. This past year, he was top 10 in the Power 5 in both forced incompletions and run defense grade. He is a complete safety prospect. Would have been easily safety one this year, in my opinion, even though I love Tyler Nubin. But I think that Indianapolis here, they need bodies in that secondary, and I really was disappointed by how little they addressed it in the actual NFL draft. I think Malachi Starks would be a guy that they would look at here at number 13.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was odd to see. Now, they got Adonai Mitchell. I can't blame them at all for that, right? It was
Latu, like great players, but it's just like your biggest need is like staring you in the face.
No, and Chris Ballard, maybe he's just taking the best players on his board at that point.
Did they pass on DeJean in the second round? No, they didn't, right?
No, I think they got beaten by one spot. Was that a trade? Was it a trade up?
I think it was. Yeah, Philly traded up for Cooper.
They got beaten in the trade up. I think they were actually next on the board. Or
Cooper DeJean would have been
perfect. It would have been perfect.
Yeah.
So it maybe, I mean, if you get beat to the guys, there's not a whole lot else you can do about it, right? And you just nothing wrong with taking Adonai Mitchell, man. They needed another receiver in there. Now you've got Pittman, Mitchell, and Downs. That's a pretty good starting point with Richardson getting healthy. But no, yeah, their secondary's a problem. Right? It's I like Kenny Moore in the slot, but the rest of it, they need help. Now, if it's not corner, like if Travis Hunter didn't go with the previous pick,
I would have probably taken it.
It would be Travis Hunter here. He'd be their number one corner. They need help at outside corner. Juju Brents is okay. He's young. Maybe he gets better, but they need like a primetime guy. Now, taking the best safety in the draft helps too. Starks can do just everything, man. I mean, top 10 in the Power 5 in forced incompletions and run defense grade. He can do it all. He's just shown us for 2 years. He's an elite safety. Probably one of the safer picks in the draft, honestly, with what we've seen. We have not seen any real sample of Malachi Starks having like a defined weakness or an extended stretch of struggling. It's just not there. I think he's got a very high floor. I do think going into this in a much better safety class than we got this year.
We'll get another one, a couple picks. Yeah.
It's a much better. Next year, the weird thing about this year's class is, or I should say this coming year's class. Now, this year's class is now the 25 class or whatever, but safeties and running backs. Yeah. Two things that we did not have a lot of high end in 24. We're getting a lot of them, and they're going to feature very heavily in the top 50 to 60 players. But moving to 14, Pittsburgh Steelers, A+ draft. Trevor gave it an A+.
Second year in a row A+.
I have to agree with him. I mean, you fix the big goal was fixing the offensive line. They've done it. You've got Russell Wilson and Justin Fields at quarterback. They fill in some other needs. Peyton Wilson, man, at
Roman Wilson,
98. Roman Wilson. Let's get one more receiver. Deontay Johnson got traded. I've got George Pickens. I've got Roman Wilson. I need another outside guy. Give me Tetsuo McMillan from Arizona.
Love it.
To me, I see a bit of Mike Evans. I think I'm going to stay on this for the whole year. People are going to get tired of hearing me say it, but like at 6'5" and right around 230, he does not move normal. He's not like Tetsuo McMillan's not a normal person, man. 89.1 receiving grade last year, just under 1,400 yards. 38 explosive plays, just a physical freak. I think he it's not like Johnny Wilson this year where it's like, okay, he's big and he moves pretty good, right? Like maybe not elite, but he moves. Tetsuo McMillan can move, man. He's got all the tools in the box. And if he goes out next year and runs a low 4.5 or even a 4.4, you could see him as a top 10 pick. I think to fill out the Steelers receiver room with this would be just nasty for whoever is their quarterback.
I absolutely agree. Yeah, lowest drop rate among Power 5 receivers with 100 targets as well. Second most contested catches behind Rome Odunze. I mean, he catches literally everything. So, I love that pick for Pittsburgh. And I think Burton at 11 and McMillan at 14 are honestly steals compared to where they are. I think they're both top 10 prospects on the big board, I believe, and we get them here at 11 and 14. So, I think that's a steal, honestly. 15 now. We mentioned the safety class before. Rams are up here. They took Cameron Kitchens, who's become interesting prospect for us here on the show, considering how bad the combine was. But I still like him. Cam Curl, 2-year contract. Unfortunately, there wasn't another safety named Cameron here that we could have taken. But I'm going to go with a guy, another K name, Kevin Winston Jr. Out of Penn State. So I think they can still add more in the safety room. And a lot like Malachi Starks, man, just a sure run defender, sure tackler. He had a 2% missed tackle rate this past year, second among all safeties in the country. He is as sure as they come in the run game. And he was actually the only safety in the country that had 85-plus grades as a run defender and in coverage. So Kevin Winston Jr., the unsung hero, I think, of Penn State's defense, and I think it'd be a really, really fun pick for that LA Rams defense if they get him here at 15.
Totally agree, and you're seeing with Aaron Donald's retirement just a concerted effort to patch up their defense, right? And I love the signings in the secondary. Curl, you mentioned, Darius Williams at corner, and then they just draft a boatload of defensive linemen, just like Atlanta did this weekend. Jared Verse, Braden Fisk. I mean, they're building it, man. But to get a guy like Winston who just combines with Curl in a zone-heavy defense, you got a dynamic pairing back there. Because people forget Cam Curl's young. What is he? 26 years old, I think.
Yeah.
Like that's a young piece, a young, dynamic, underrated piece that they got. And you add Winston to that secondary. Then maybe they need a little more help at corner, but it's hard to pass up a talent like Winston. This again, the safety class. Now we've got 2 safeties in the top 15. We didn't get one picked this year until I believe it was 47.
Yeah,
it's just really the next 2 years, it's a much better safety class. 16, Jacksonville.
The 2026 safety class. I'm just, now that you say that, dude, oh my God, it's gonna be even better than this,
Caleb
dude.
Downs and
Thieneman.
Thieneman's 26.
Yes, yeah.
Nasty. Just you've got dudes coming at safety the next 2 years. But staying in the secondary with Jacksonville, we got another freak. We got a freak here. Arizona, at least we're pretty sure he's playing at Arizona this year. He's in the portal, but practicing, but not sure if he's going to stay in the portal or what.
And schools can't contact him either. He can only reach out to them. So he's going to stay. I think he's going to stay.
Until we see him week 1, we'll say Arizona with an asterisk. But
right.
Here's what's going to happen on every channel, no matter which one you watch over the next year. Tacario Davis, the cornerback for Arizona, is going to endlessly get compared to Tariq Woolen. That's just what's going to happen because he's 6'4" and he's great in man coverage and he gets to the ball. He had an 85.9 coverage grade last year, broke up 12 passes. That's what he's going to get compared to. There's going to be a team that looks at his size, looks at his movement ability, and he's probably more polished than Woolen was at that point. People forget Woolen went in the 5th round, pretty much for his frame and his speed, but Tacario Davis is a monster, man. He was their best defensive player on a resurgent Arizona team. He'll be the reason that their defense is good if it's good this year with the new coaching staff. He's another freak. We got some freakish corners, man.
And honestly, dude, he's one of those guys. So I say this for a few guys where it's like, yeah, the game tape is great, and that's how you scout a prospect, obviously. There are some teams though that you're like, I'd almost rather watch the practice tape. Like a couple years ago when it was like Penei Sewell, Kayvon Thibodeau. Just show me practice tape of those two going at it, and I'll judge them off that. Derek Stingley Jr. versus Jamar Chase. Show me practice footage of that, and I'll go off of that. Tacario Davis against Tetro McMillan, dude. Those big guys, too. It's not even like Tacario Davis would be a mismatch because McMillan's that big at 6'5". He's 6'4". So, I mean, I would love to see Tacario Davis against Tetro McMillan practice footage, man, because that could be I'm sure a lot of NFL teams are like, listen, we got the game tape, but they're going to hit up Arizona and be like, send us the practice tape. Let's see how those two go at it, because I agree. Those are two top first half of the first round picks that you're going to see at those two. I would love to get access to that practice footage because I think it would be a lot of fun to watch those two just go at it with each other. All right, Cleveland here at number 17. They could use some more help at linebacker. They got Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Let's get another guy that I think Jim Schwartz, who's maybe the best D coordinator in the league right now, would have a lot of fun just using as a chess piece, is Harold Perkins, the linebacker out of LSU. Now, this might be late for a lot of people when they're watching this right now because they always think of Harold Perkins as like a top 5, top 10 pick. He's a little bit of a tweener. He's not big enough to be a full-time edge rusher because he's only 6'1", 220 pounds. So he's got to be an off-ball linebacker, probably at the next level. But he kind of struggled as a run defender, but he did have an 81.1 coverage grade, as you saw right there this past season. He's a linebacker in name only, probably. He's kind of more of like a defensive chess piece that you could just move around the defense. Obviously, you want him playing a little bit off the edge because he's got unbelievable ability as a pass rusher. He's just not big enough to do it full time, like say a Micah Parsons was, going from linebacker to edge defender and obviously becoming a superstar. Harold Perkins isn't big enough to do that, but he's still so athletic and he has unbelievable pass rushing ability. And he had great tape and coverage this past year. I think he's still worth a first-round pick, but he's a little bit lower here than maybe some people would have thought he would be, just because he's a little bit of a tweener in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's the one reason you worry about it. He's shown us big-time pass rush talent. He's shown he can play in coverage, but you do worry about the size a little bit. I think for the athletic talent, you kind of have to take him somewhere very early. Like, he's a dominant football player wherever he's been. It's just does it project, right? And you're talking about guys who are positionless. Like, this was kind of the worry a little bit with even Isaiah Simmons, who just never found a home, right? If Perkins can't find a home, at least like if he could play, if he's a guy like a cracked out Frankie Louvu who can play linebacker most of the time, and then you put him on the edge and let him rip, it kind of makes sense. And Perkins is way more talented than a guy like Louvu, but I think you do have to have a real plan with Perkins to make it work.
He's like the Brock Bowers of the 2025 class, where it's like, well, Brock Bowers is like obviously a better overall player, I think, but he's like, you better get him to a creative offensive coordinator. You better get Harold Perkins to a creative defensive coordinator. If you're just be like, no, you're just playing linebacker and that's all you're going to do, it's not going to work probably. But Jim Schwartz, you won assistant coach of the year this past year. I think he's a creative enough player. But yeah, I think Trevor Sickle yesterday when we were talking about, versatile players, like, listen, he made a great point that I think I'm going to use more. It's like, there's a difference between being versatile and being homeless. And I think Harold Perkins is a little bit in that in-between right now. So I think he's a really intriguing athlete and should still be a first-round pick. It's just you got to get him to a creative defensive coordinator, because if not, I don't think it'll work if you try to play him full-time edge, full-time linebacker. It's not going to work, I don't think.
No, I totally agree. Totally agree with that. Moving to 18 here. It's all about the Wolverines, isn't it? It always is. It's always about
perfect.
It's always about the national champions. It's always about, and it's, you know what? It's always about Jim Harbaugh too. Chargers here at 18. Don't have much at tight end. They have Will Dissly as a blocking guy. Let's get a receiving tight end in here, and let's get the best tight end in the country from what was last year the best team in the country. Jim Harbaugh just can't help himself but reunite with Colston, Loveland, give Justin Herbert another weapon, a guy with experience in that system when you're talking about run blocking, but also, look, 10th best receiving grade in the country last year, 5th most receiving yards in the country last year, and he's going to come back and be ready for a monster year because they lost their top 2 receivers. He's their best receiving threat.
Oh, absolutely.
Returning. And he's going to be leaned on heavily with whoever plays quarterback at Michigan. So the talent's off the charts. He can really, really run. He's got experience in a pro-style offense, in the Harbaugh offense. It would be weird for me if the Chargers are picking here and they feel like, man, I just need more out of a tight end like Harbaugh used to get with Vernon Davis, or he's always had at Michigan. Colston Loveland, Michigan guy, Jim Harbaugh, Michigan guy, the whole bit, the national title.
Much sense.
It just makes too much sense.
Yeah.
Like, we got here and we were like, who would it be? It's Colston.
Yeah, it took 2 seconds. Right? They were like, because they didn't take a tight end, right? I don't think they took a tight end in the draft.
I don't believe so, and if they did, it was late.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, dude, and that was one of their biggest needs. And we mocked Brock Bowers to them endlessly because we thought Harbaugh would love him. The only tight end he might love more than Brock Bowers is the guy he just won a national championship with. And he obviously loved Colston Loveland considering how much they used him in that offense at Michigan. So, yes, this is if he is on the board for the Chargers next year, I can almost guarantee that he will be a Los Angeles Charger. So I think it's a great pick there. Number 18. 19, Chicago Bears, which now we're at number 19, meaning these are the playoff teams. Chicago Bears currently a playoff team right now. Obviously, they have really done an amazing job fixing that offense. You get Caleb Williams at number 1 overall. You get Rome Odunze at number 9 overall. They could use some more help defensively. I think that's where they're going to go here at number 19 overall. They took Austin Booker in the 5th round. Intriguing guy, developmental guy. I think they could still add more opposite of Montez Sweat. And we're going to go with Jack Sawyer here, the edge defender of Ohio State. Mentioned Austin Booker, high ceiling guy, maybe a low floor. Jack Sawyer, high floor. Man, he is such a damn good football player right now. Such a well-rounded player. In fact, he was the only FBS edge defender who had 85-plus grades, both as a pass rusher and as a run defender. Now, I don't know if there's a really high ceiling there with Jack Sawyer, but what you're getting right now in him is just a really good football player with no true weaknesses in his game. So I think Chicago, like I said, they could use another edge defender opposite of Montez Sweat. And you already got the upside guy in Austin Booker. Let's get the high floor guy here in Jack Sawyer.
It's a great pick, and he feels like a Chicago Bear.
He does.
It's just exactly what they need across from Montez Sweat. Just a balanced player who can excel, run and pass, probably at some point maybe get you about 10 to 12 sacks in a given season. Like, he's not going to lead the league in sacks. I don't think he's the most athletically gifted guy in this draft, but when you talk about one of the safest players that he's just going to give you everything he has on every snap, run or pass. There's not a whole lot of major flaws to Sawyer's game, right? He just doesn't have an elite get-off, but I think for this team and a team that really – I don't think it's being said enough. They've had issues in run defense in recent years, and what he would do setting one edge with Sweat, it got better as the year went on because Sweat went in there and started just setting the edge. Like they just didn't have enough of that at all. So it's a great pick. I think it's a super Chicago Bears pick. Jack Sawyer just feels like a bear to me. Like it fills out their defensive line in a way they badly need. Moving ahead to 20, filling out another defensive line, right? Texans are loaded at edge, right? We've got Danielle Hunter, we've got Will Anderson, we've got Danico Autry. We're loaded at edge. A little weaker inside right now. They didn't end up getting a Johnny Newton or a Braden Fisk or a guy like that even some of their fans were really talking about him. Like their fans love Braden Fisk. Like they wanted him bad, but the Rams paid the price to get him. So let's go interior here. Let's go back to what we could have debates, but what is probably the best pair of defensive tackles in the country heading into next year.
I think it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, Mason Graham going early in the draft. Now let's get the other one. Kenneth Grant, also an 80.4 overall grade last year. Just a solid football player. Same thing, just well-rounded. Not quite on Graham's level, but really, really good. And both of them only playing the low 400 snaps last year because they rotate guys. Michigan's a deep defensive line. Grant is just a solid all-around football player, and I think a guy who, maybe some Texans fans were looking for in a Fisk or a Newton this year, they can get that in a Kenneth Grant next year to just fill out once. That's like the one spot on their defense to me where I just don't love right now is on the interior. Like maybe if you're going to attack the Texans, you run right down their throat. Kenneth Grant would fix some of that.
Dude, this D tackle class next year is going to be special. You might have 2 top 5 picks in Graham and Walker, and then Grant later first round. We actually have another one going a little bit later in the first round as well. Yeah, it's going to be a special D tackle class next year. Jets here at 21. Obviously signed Mike Williams, but he's only on a 1-year deal. And they drafted Malachi Corley, but I still think they can add more to that receiver room. Let's go with Mecca Egbuka here, the third receiver off the board from Ohio State. So actually entering 2023, we were talking about him as the number 2 receiver, not only in college football, but in the NFL draft, only behind Marvin Harrison Jr. And Harrison went wire to wire, obviously as wide receiver 1. That never changed. But Egbuka battled injuries this past year, a little bit of a down year as well. Forced him to return for another season to be the senior wide receiver and the leader of Ohio State's receiver room. He's a smooth route runner, great at finding soft spots in zone coverage as well. He's just a smooth player overall, man. And I think he's going to be a guy that he's not really being talked about by a lot of people. And when you bring him up, people are like, oh, he was bad this past year. He's going to remind a lot of people why we were so high on him entering the year. And he could be – I think he will be Ohio State's wide receiver 1. Maybe Jeremiah Smith, the true freshman, has something to say about that. But I think Emeka Egbuka, pretty safe bet at wide receiver. And he's still, even after the down year and even after the injuries, he still probably would have been like a 2nd-round pick maybe in the NFL draft this year. So I think, again, Mike Williams on a 1-year deal. This makes sense here for the Jets to add one more, and maybe another Garrett Wilson's teammate in Emeka Egbuka to that Jets receiving room.
Well, right, because then you're talking about 3 long-term pieces at receiver for him. Garrett Wilson, Malachi Corley, who they had ranked as wide receiver 4 in this draft, which is a shocking revelation.
Yeah.
But they loved him. They apparently woke up on day 2, and they were like, we have to get Malachi Corley.
They did the draft day thing where they said no matter what. Vontae Mack no matter what. It was Malachi Corley no matter what.
Yeah. They just they loved him that much. So if they loved Corley that much and then you add Egbuka to that group, the interesting part is Egbuka wide receiver 1 for them? Is he? It's going to be an interesting storyline.
Yeah.
Now, if Jeremiah Smith is good enough that he steps in and he's wide receiver 1, Ohio State's going to win a national title.
Yeah.
If he's that good that early, like some people think he might be, and Egbuka really is pushed to 2, they're the favorites.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even Will Howard, Julian Sand, whoever's throwing the ball.
The fact that we're talking about, and I ranked Emeka Egbuka as my number 3 receiver in college football, and pretty by a mile, he was number 3. The fact that we're even talking about true freshman unseating the number 3 receiver in college football is like that. Jeremiah Smith could be special.
Oh, it's Ohio State's coming, but Emeka Egbuka.
I hope so.
I mean, it's really, he came into this year possibly people thinking wide receiver 2.
Yeah.
And kind of had a down year and some injuries. I think he battled through some ankle injuries. I want to say also. It was a struggle, but no, he could really. This is a good fit. If you're the Jets, just keep adding weapons, whether it's Aaron Rodgers or not. Now, if it's not Aaron Rodgers, we have a different conversation here. But let's assume Aaron Rodgers says he's going to play at least 2 more years. He wants, I don't know how many more it's going to be. Just get him another.
He doesn't win the nomination of vice president.
Something along those lines, or he's not the first man to throw a football in space or something.
Right.
I don't know with him sometimes, but it's really them stacking weapons. I have to like the receiving core with Mike Williams, and if he goes after a 1-year deal, Ibuka's a nice pick.
Yep.
All right, 22 is a fun one.
Yep.
22 is fun. Atlanta Falcons. Now, they like the Rams, which makes sense with Raheem Morris.
Think Quinn Ewers here?
They went, I don't think so, but maybe.
Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix Jr., Quinn Ewers.
Fill the room. I was telling you before, maybe it starts to look like a college quarterback room where you're a 5-star and you're a 4 and you're a 4, and like just stacked with talent, right? Like Ohio State, how their quarterback room used to be.
Yep.
We're going to skip quarterback here.
Okay.
They went with the quantity approach on their D-line. They got some good players, right? You've got Brendan Dorless. You got Ruka Rororo. You've got Braylon Trice. Like, good players. Let's get a freak.
Yep.
Let's get an absolute freak. Let's go to Penn State. And a guy in Abdul Carter who wears that famous number 11, who played linebacker last year and posted a 90.3 pass rush grade and is apparently going to move at least most of the time to the edge.
He's listed as an edge now.
He's listed as an edge now.
He's going to be full-time D-end, yeah.
Man, this is a freak.
Yeah.
This is a freak. Here's another one. So we had Tariq Woolen and Takario Davis earlier. The Abdul Carter, Micah Parsons comparisons are going to be off the hook.
Yes.
They're going to be absolutely off the hook, man. Like, it's going to be endless. Oh, my God, look at number 11 for Penn State. He looks just like Micah Parsons. And if he's really 6'3" and 250, moving the way he moves, this is an animal. If he shows full-time on the edge what he showed us, like, in bits last year, this is going to be way too low for him.
Oh, absolutely. It could be top 5, top 10 we're talking about, yeah.
It could be we're talking about edge 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, it's like people are going to make the Parsons
and
comparisons.
he's as freaky as Pierce, dude. So, like, if Pierce doesn't develop and Abdul looks a little more developed, he could push for edge 1.
From what I've seen, the little bit that I've seen, he also looks better in coverage than Parsons.
Yeah,
his change of direction in coverage is freaky, like, for a guy his size. Like, he probably, if he stayed at linebacker,
would be probably top linebacker. Yeah.
I think he's actually, with his size, he's probably LB1 over Perkins. But we just we don't know what he is right now, and we haven't seen him play on the edge, say, 80% of the time.
Right.
Because he can blitz in any gap. It doesn't matter. Like, he's going to be the matchup nightmare. Man, I'm telling you, like, say Washington wins a handful of games and they're picking in the teens. Man, would Dan Quinn just take another one? Like, honestly, like, they need a primetime edge guy. And if he already knows how to use a guy like Parsons, and if this is another one, how could he not? But Atlanta here at 22 getting a prime edge rusher, it just makes too much sense. They were in the bottom 8 in pass rush grade last year as a team. It's their one big weakness right now still. So this would solve that problem at heartbeat.
And he is how I would describe Abdul Carter for people who aren't aware of him. I think he is who people think Harold Perkins is. That's who Abdul Carter actually is. You know, he's 6'3", 250 pounds. He's got the size to play edge. Perkins can't do it full time. Abdul Carter can. And obviously, it's not just the comp because he's a Penn State player who wears number 11. The Micah Parsons thing is real, man. I really do, because of how freaky they are. And Parsons went from linebacker to edge in the NFL. Penn State saw that, and they saw how good Micah was at edge in the NFL. And obviously, he was still a great linebacker at Penn State. I'm not taking that away from him. He was the best linebacker in the country. But would have been more valuable as an edge defender. Penn State probably saw that and goes, oh, shit, we really fucked that up with Micah Parsons. Let's not mess it up again with Abdul Carter. So I love it. I love that he's playing edge full-time. Again, it's a projection, which is why he's 22, but this could look laughably low next year.
Oh, yeah.
He could be a lot higher than this. So, yeah, Abdul Carter, absolutely. Now, I will say, he did just get he has a misdemeanor assault charge. I think he assaulted a tow truck driver I'm looking at right now, actually a few days ago. So we'll see what happens with that, obviously. So a little bit of off-field issues, but on the field, he is a fantastic athlete and a fantastic pass rusher, and I cannot wait to see what he can do as a full-time edge this next year. All right, so number 23 now. We got the Miami Dolphins. So they lost Christian Wilkins in free agency, and a lot of us in the first round even, we're talking Jerzon Newton, we're talking Byron Murphy. They didn't take a defensive tackle at all in the entire draft, let alone the first round. The entire draft, they went without taking a defensive tackle. So we're going to go with one here. And this is a little bit lower on the big board. He's around I think he's number 37 overall on the big board if you want to go check it out. But so it's a little bit of a reach maybe. But Howard Cross III is just a damn good football player, man. Now he is on the smaller side. He's 6'1", 284 pounds, and he's older. He's a sixth-year senior, but he was one of the most productive interior defensive linemen in college football this past year. He had a 90.8 grade in 2023. The only ones above him were Tavondre Sweat, who was a second-round pick, Byron Murphy, first-round pick, and Mason Graham just went number 3 overall in our mock draft. Those are the only ones with a higher grade than Howard Cross III. Now, I don't know if I say he will be a first-round pick because, again, I think the size and the age might preclude him from being that, but I'd be pretty shocked if he's not at least a second-round pick or a day 2 pick in next year's draft. So, again, maybe he won't be actually a first-round pick as he is right here, but he's a really safe player just with how good he is right now. So, and again, Miami, I was shocked by them not taking any defensive tackles at all in the draft. So I think Howard Cross III would be the next one I take here.
Yeah, their salary cap situation really hamstrung them when it comes to Christian Wilkins and finding replacements on the interior. I believe they signed Raekwon Davis, but there's really been no substantially legitimate replacement for Wilkins, and it makes you worry. They're loaded on the edge now all of a sudden. They've got Jalen Phillips, they've got Shaq Barrett, they've got Bradley Chubb and Mo Kamara and Chop Robinson and all these guys on the edge, but there's not a whole lot working for them inside. So, this is the perfect pick as just a safe bet. This is a really good football player. I don't know what Miami's run defense looks like right now. So a guy like Cross, who, and again, Notre Dame, man, I'm telling you, this Notre Dame defense has an absolute boatload of talent. They got another D tackle in Riley Mills, who's really, really good.
Yeah.
Maybe a better pass rusher than Howard Cross, but Cross gets the fit as kind of the run defense fix here, the immediate Christian Wilkins replacement, and a guy who could fill those shoes. He sure could. I mean, and I know he's not that imposing when you look at him, but man, is he really good. Mm-hmm. Moving ahead to 24 to Green Bay. We've got Green Bay in the playoffs again with Jordan Love staying hot. Defense also here. Now, they spent their offseason fixing up at safety, right? You've got Xavier McKinney. They got Javon Bullard. They've got just several players now at safety. That was the weak spot heading into the offseason. Now I think I'm going to pivot to corner.
Okay.
I think there's been a kind of an open competition for the CB2 spot across from Jair Alexander. I'll tell you what, I know he's not the best corner in this draft, but he might be my favorite. I just love the competitor that Jabbar Muhammad, who was at Washington and is now pivoting to Oregon. He is just feisty. Certain corners are fun to watch. I put L'Jarius Sneed in that category. I put what's the other one I was thinking? It was Terrion Arnold.
Oh, Terrion Arnold.
That's the one. I was thinking the one this year. I was thinking of, it's the Alabama. Yeah, Terrion Arnold. It's hard to forget him, man. He was just. No, he went first round.
He did,
and then
the
they
Lions.
got Rake Straw. That's right. I was mixing up. The corners all dropped way too far this year.
It's insane. It's
wild.
Insane.
It's
yeah.
I was prepared to talk about them all going top 20. And
Eagles got CB1 and CB2 on the PFF big board. Yeah. And in first and second round. It wasn't like they took 2 first-round corners. It was first and second round got CB1, CB2. It was crazy, yeah.
Yeah, Muhammad's a ball hawk, though, right? 86.7 coverage grade over the last 2 years, and he's broken up 21 passes over the last 2 seasons. Feisty, kind of small.
Yeah.
Kind of has to play with sometimes better technique, but just that, certain corners give you that alpha presence. They're just really aggressive, and they want to get after the football. They want to get in receivers' faces. They want to hit people. Jabbar Muhammad's just so competitive. He's honestly my favorite corner to watch, even for entertainment value. Watching him play corner is like watching a boxing match.
Yeah.
I love it, man. It's just so the attitude you need. And I think Jair Alexander kind of plays in a similar manner, right? Even though his technique is probably better than Muhammad's. But I think it would be a good fit for them, especially with Jeff Hafley probably going to a lot more man coverage in their defense. Muhammad, I like as a fit across from Alexander in Green Bay.
Yeah, like you said, he's a little bit small. He's 5'10", 183. But, man, that size is not, it dictate how he plays the game, man. He is a really competitive player, like you said. And, again, he's not like a Kyrie Jackson build, But Kyrie Jackson is incredibly feisty and competitive. That's what Jabbar Muhammad is. So I think he's a great replacement for Kyrie Jackson in that way. 25, here we go. Dallas Cowboys. This is the fun one. All right, so Dak Prescott right now is on the final year of his contract, and all the reports are coming out. They are not signing an extension. He is going to play this year on his final year, and then who knows? He's an unrestricted free agent. Maybe we'll return to the Cowboys, maybe not. So, at number 25, they're going to go with Quinn Ewers, the quarterback out of Texas. I know you and Trevor are both a little bit lower on him than I am, at least. He's a little raw. I admit that. He's got a high ceiling, great arm talent, 85.6 passing grade this past year. He really improved in a lot of ways. Texas offense did make it easy on him with a lot of play action, and obviously with all the weapons they had, which I think is a big question going into this year is how he's going to look. He still has great weapons. Isaiah Bond transferring in there is huge. Got some other really talented transfers as well. But you lose Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, Jordan Whittington, Jatavion Sanders, Jonathan Brooks in the back. They lost a lot offensively. So it's going to be interesting what Quinn Ewers can do this year. Got a high ceiling. And more than that, like I just see Jerry Jones maybe not wanting to pay Dak Prescott $50 million a year. And you got a quarterback from Texas here on the board. And you know Jerry loves those Texas boys, man. So I think there's if any team is going to take Quinn Ewers, maybe the Dallas Cowboys would make the most sense. I could totally see Jerry Jones loving Quinn Ewers, loving the Texas boy, born and raised in Texas as well. I could see Jerry, especially with Dak on his final year and not signing an extension. I could see the Dallas Cowboys, moving on with Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, it's a Cowboys pick, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very Cowboy pick.
I think for me, it's just I think we've yet to see enough where Quinn Ewers can just drop back in true drop back situations and dominate. There's a lot of screen in that offense. There's a lot of RPO in that offense. There's a lot of play action in that offense. Sarkisian props it up schematically a bit. Now, does he have arm talent? Yeah. Does he have a funky release? Also kind of,
yeah. Phillip Rivers a little bit, like a little sidearm.
It's a little low. I mean, the deep balls are pretty when he gets them there, man.
Yeah.
It's like that moonball Russell Wilson kind of thing you see sometimes.
It's frustrating, dude. He's like so good against like Alabama, and then like other games against bad defense, he's just all of a sudden just can't hit anyone. It's a little weird. It's inconsistent.
It is inconsistent, and I think this year just stands as a prove-it year, right? And Texas moving to the SEC. All right, what do you have against SEC defenses week in and week out, right? And on top of the part where they're playing Michigan out of conference, right? They're going to Ann Arbor. So we're going to find out. We're going to find out really, really quick about Quinn Ewers.
Quinn Ewers, I think in the betting odds is like tied. So I think it's Shore is number one, and then tied for second is Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers could either be like a top 5 pick in the draft, or he could be benched in week 2 and Arch Manning is taking over the job. We're talking Arch Manning in 2026. Like, that's the range of outcomes. Like, I could see this feels...
He's going to get rattlered.
I was just going to say, this feels rattlery, where it's like you go into 2022 and you're like, Spencer Rattler, number 1 overall pick. 6 weeks later, he's on the bench.
Wow.
And Caleb Williams is taking over. Got the I don't know. It feels a little
a Rattler Williams storyline for as great as it was.
Doesn't it feel like it, dude?
And it's not just now. You're not just talking about Caleb Williams. You're talking about a Manning.
You're talking about a Manning. If the second Quinn Ewers throws an incompletion, Texas fans are going to be begging for Arch Manning. Did you see him in the spring game?
Oh, Manning?
He looked good in the spring. Dude, they're already whispers.
He looked like the number 1 recruit in the country. Should look, right? He looked like a 5-star.
Well, Quinn was too. Quinn was one of the highest ranked. So dude, it feels so rattlery. It feels so rattlery, and it makes me hesitant. That's why he's 25 and not top 3 like he's in the sports books. It feels rattlery, and I'm a little nervous about that. But at the same time, I feel like we have to have Ewers in the top 3 too, because I think the ceiling is there.
He has to prove it. I'm on board if he's got the talent to be QB3. I'm not putting him up with the first 2 guys.
Like, no. There's a gap.
If he proves it, I'm on board with a first-round pick. Based on what we've seen, I don't know how much I agree with him going this high. Yeah. But again, Dallas is quietly on the list of teams that very well could need a quarterback.
And it's a Texas boy.
And it's Jerry Jones.
And he loves Texas boys, dude.
And it's a Longhorn. And again, what they can do, paying Dak, I think, $60 million this year, right? Mm-hmm. Off the books, right? Yeah. Build elsewhere. Now you can build elsewhere in free agency.
Yeah, rookie quarterback contract.
You already have CeeDee Lamb. You already have a Jake Ferguson, right? You're building the offensive line now. Now you're talking about, again, the rookie quarterback contract, that's a big thing. That's a big thing, getting to use that money elsewhere. So maybe Quinn can come into a situation in Dallas where he can succeed right away, but he has to prove it at the college level first that he's an elite guy.
Just real quick, looking back at the Cowboys draft picks in terms of just who they've taken in the first round. I mean, it's been like Tyler Guy in Oklahoma. Yeah, they take so many guys that is just like in that area. He has like CeeDee Lamb, Oklahoma. Like he just loves. And like Micah Parsons played in Jerry World and had an unbelievable game against Memphis. Like they're just, he has a type. Jerry Jones loves the guys.
Like you said, doesn't he? Like guys that have played
in his backyard.
He likes guys that have played in that stadium.
Yeah,
right?
and like CeeDee Lamb had an unbelievable game in the Big 12 championship game in Jerry World. It's like he's just in that backyard. So I don't know if Texas plays in Jerry World this year, but obviously it's not that far of a trip for Jerry Jones to make. I could again the fact that Ewers not only goes to Texas but born and raised in Texas. I don't know, man. I could see this just feels like a Cowboy.
Man,
it feels the Cowboys. Yeah.
I mean, all right. Let's go to their rival here at 26. We got our hot Cowboys one in. Let's look at the Eagles. And I think they got Johnny. This got to be a weirder pick because they got Johnny Wilson so late and it's such a good value. But I've been in the boat where they need one more weapon, just one more. Like let me get Brown and Devontae, and maybe Devontae moving into the slot, and I just need. Look, games are played in 11 personnel, right? I need 3 really good receivers if that's going to be the case. I'm taking the talent play here. I could have some debate about this. You kind of talked me into this one. Evan Stewart, the wide receiver, he was at Texas A&M. He is now at Oregon, had a really good freshman year, battled through injuries last year, ankle problems that really kind of, I think if he is more explosive than he's shown on tape, I think the injury kind of took some of that away. Only a 73.7 receiving grade this year, which is still pretty good when you're talking about a true sophomore, right? He's an excellent route runner, right? He's got solid hands. They could get a little bit better. I think he had 4 drops this year on not that many targets, so it's not terrible. He's got like solid hands, but not A+ hands. But he's got talent, Yeah. When he's healthy, he can make people miss too. His freshman year, he forced 10 missed tackles, right? This year, none, but battling the ankle injury and trying to play through it. It was a problem for him. So he could have a huge year. I think the big thing, this is projecting what his year is going to look like at Oregon. He's there with Tej Johnson, with Dylan Gabriel, with Jordan James on an offense that's still wide open and still he's going to get schemed open looks, and he's a good one-on-one route runner, okay? So Evan Stewart, there's a chance he could go out there this year and have 1,200 yards. Anytime you have a guy like that, you have to pay attention to him on an offense like that. He's going to get a lot of looks because Dylan Gabriel and the RPO that everything they do up there in Eugene, Evan Stewart and Tej Johnson are like co-wide receiver 1, 1-2, 1A, 1B, however you want to put it. This is more about projection and you and your five-star talent level. Was he the number 1 recruit in the country or just receiver?
No, just receiver. He actually was he was number 2, receiver. Burden was number 1.
Oh, okay.
So they nailed that.
Well, there we go. Yeah. Well, they may have nailed both of them for sure. I mean, and Evan Stewart's got all the talent. I love his route running. Just straight up, I think at the very least he's a high floor like wide receiver 2 in the NFL, which is where I'm projecting him for the Eagles here, or 2 or 3 are a really good 3 that should be a 2 with those other 2 guys in Philadelphia. But I'm a fan now, especially that they fixed their secondary in a huge way.
Oh my God,
one more weapon would do it for me with Philly's offense.
I agree, man. Actually, at the end of this, we should go back because there are a lot of the 5 stars in our first round mock draft. So I might be able to prove you wrong here with how many 5 stars we got here. But anyways, all right, Eli, your Cincinnati Bengals here at 27. I wanted to get your input on this. I have Ollie Gordon, first running back off the board, going to Cincinnati right here. How do you feel about getting the Doak Walker Award winner?
Considering the fact that I work at PFF, I have to say no. I have to veto this immediately. But no, I mean, obviously, Ollie Gordon's a hell of a talent. We've talked about this before. I mean, the running back class is insane this year. I think with how deep it's likely going to be, with how the NFL views running backs, I'd be very against this. Because, I mean, probably your RB3 or 4 would probably have been RB2 this year?
Maybe
RB1.
Maybe.
So our RB4 right now, I believe, is Ashton Genty.
And Ashton Genty probably, probably is RB1.
Check out the Ashton Genty interview, by the way. Knowing the Bengals, though, do you think this is something they would do or no?
I would say no.
Like
they haven't drafted RB early in a while.
Okay.
I legitimately think they're probably going edge next year.
Okay.
Just because you're probably having the Sam Hubbard conversation this year. Love Sam Hubbard, Cincinnati guy, but he just doesn't give you the juice of the pass rush that you need. And especially with this Trey Hendrickson stuff going on, like I think edge is the move. So seeing the Ohio State edge, is it Tamoau?
Yeah, Tuimoloau.
Tuimoloau. Seeing him go right behind, that's probably the pick I would have said. But
yeah,
I mean,
Ohio State guy too. Yeah,
I just love building around Burrow though.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
Like, how could I not have the best offense in the league?
To be
when
fair,
I have Joe Burrow?
Yeah.
this way too early mock is about team fits, and we're talking about the team fits. Obviously, it's also about just showing how good these what the top prospects are.
Yeah.
This running back class is too good to not have any in the first round. That I think we just had to throw him.
Well,
in
it was
somewhere.
I think. Too, it was a big thing for us, and the only other spot in these last like 6 or 7 that we discussed running back was at 32.
Yeah.
But I think they love Pacheco, man.
Yeah.
They love him, and they got him in the 7th too,
since
right?
he's got Zach Moss, and
Right. I think
Chase Brown.
I would define it as a need. I like Zach Moss, but I don't think there's a ton of explosive plays coming from Zach Moss. Ollie Gordon's an explosive play waiting to happen.
Yeah, he had he obviously won the Doak Walker Award, which is given to the best running back in college football. He had 1,732 rushing yards this past year. He only had 19 carries in the first 3 games of the season. Also, ran behind the 103rd best run blocking offensive line. 103rd in run blocking grade, Oklahoma State was this past year. So it is insane what he was able to do. I think he was averaging, if you do the math, he was averaging, I think, 150 yards a game in the last 11 games of the season. So,
and that's including the conference title game against Texas.
When he had like 30.
He had like 30. So
because they couldn't block Sweat and Murphy. Yeah.
Before that, it was some disgusting number, and it was really, that was the only defense with 2 top 40 picks in the middle that could stop it.
He had like 600 yards in like a 3-week span. It was just like he was averaging like 200 a game. It was absurd, dude.
I got to work his game against Cincinnati, which is crazy.
Oh my God,
it was nuts.
Yeah.
He just
our
went
poor
crazy
Bearcats, Bearcats in that game. Also, want to keep throwing this in. He had 330 receiving yards too, which is like I think top 5 in the Power 5. So like he was a really good receiver out of the backfield too. So I think Ollie Gordon, loaded running back class next year, headlined by him. Quinshon Judkins now at Ohio State. Marion Hampton out of North Carolina, and Ashton Ginty out of Boise State. Again, check out the interview with Ashton Ginty. He's a stud on the field and on the mic. But Ollie Gordon, as a reigning Doak Walker Award winner, deserves to be RB1 heading into the season, at least right now.
And a Doak Walker Award winner having not really played the first 3 games, which is
crazy.
Absolutely nuts. 28, Buffalo Bills. A lot of ways this could go. There's some people that probably think they need another receiver, or they need O-line, or, it's not a complete team by any means. They're always searching for talent. I'm going to go to corner here, though. And I think, you've got Rasul Douglas as a short-term option. They kind of busted on Kyer Elam a few years ago. He's still a backup, and he really shouldn't be at this point in his career, but he just hasn't played up to standard. So let's take another swing at corner. Let's go to Ohio State, who is also in the running for best defense in the country.
Yep.
We've got several guys that could be first-round picks. Let's take Denzel Burke here. I think very quietly a career-high 81.7 coverage grade this season. Plays equally well in man and zone. He doesn't really lean one way or the other. So he's just a guy who you bring in late in the first round, just a solid football player. Like, he's not as flashy as, say, Takario Davis. He's not as lights out, like, impress man as a Will Johnson. Like, he's not quite on that level, but I think it's reasonable to think that he might have gone in this slot if he came out this year. It was him more than maybe any other Ohio State player. I was very surprised that he came back to school.
Yeah.
I don't know if he feels like the stock dipped for any reason, because he had his best season. But him coming back to Ohio State, 1, is a luxury. And 2, it does give him a shot to maybe prove that he's one of those guys and he could go higher than this. But I think at 28, Denzel Burke is a solid, safe, probably, if he can prove as a CB1, cool, probably a high-floor CB2 kind of type there at 28. But I think if you land that this late in the first round, there's nothing wrong with it.
No, absolutely not. And actually, one of his teammates that was also a pretty surprising returner to Ohio State goes here to the Lions right after at number 29. And JT Tuimoloau, the edge defender out of Ohio State. Again, pretty surprising that the Lions didn't take an edge. And I know they kind of, marched to the beat of their own drum in the NFL draft, and it's worked out amazingly for them. But I was a little surprised they didn't take an edge defender, because obviously they can use a little bit of an upgrade opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. Now, the thing with Tuimoloau, he has been so frustrating as a player. So frustrating because you see the tools, former top 5 recruit coming out of high school. You see the tools with him, and you see the high-end flashes. I mean, if you want to understand why JT Tuimoloau has the hype he does, go back to his 2022 game against Penn State. In that game, and I guess Olu Fashanu in that game as well, he had 2 interceptions, which for an edge defender is ridiculous. One of them we returned for pick 6. A ton of pressures. He had a few sacks as well. He quite literally won that game for Ohio State, and him and Marvin Harrison Jr., who was uncoverable, as you could expect. But Tuimoloau just has games like that where you're like, man, that is a top 5 pick. And then the rest of the year, it's so frustrating. He has 74.5 grade this year. I like some of the stuff he has as a pass rusher, not a great run defender, and why Jack Sawyer, I think, went above him. He's just so much more consistent than him. But Tuimoloau has legit tools, man, and I think he can be a first-round pick, but it's just we've been waiting on it for a couple years now, and the consistency is just not there. Hopefully he can get more consistent this year, but the tools are enough for him to be a first-round pick in this mock, but I just want him to get more consistent because then he could be a lot higher than this, honestly.
There are a lot of scouts who are going to like Tuimoloau better than Sawyer.
Yeah.
There are 2 types. I'll let you in on the grading here a little bit. There are 2 types of players that grade in the mid-70s. Guys who grade 70, right around there, every single week, and guys who grade a 90 one week and 50 the next. Mm-hmm. And Tuimoloau, it is frustrating because there are moments when he absolutely takes games over. It's like single-handedly, he is unstoppable.
That Penn State game, I'm telling you, dude,
especially he is a guy you look at as, sometimes what D-line coaches or defensive coordinators call the closer. Like fourth quarter comes, true pass rush, let's go. What you talk about pinning your ears back. He is ready for the moment. In the fourth quarter of these games, he's a closing type of pass rusher. He just needs to bring it every single play. Mm-hmm. He really does. It's great to be great in big moments, but you can't be a superstar unless you bring it front to back, right? From the first whistle to the very last one. It's what, to me, makes a guy like Aiden Hutchinson so great. Yeah. You never takes a play off, ever. Tuimoloau has as much talent as almost every edge in this draft. He could be much higher than this. He could go higher than Sawyer. He could probably be somewhere like edge 3 when it's all said and done. I just need it every week and every play, right? But at Ohio State, gunning to win a national title this year,
maybe we'll do it.
Bring it.
And if he goes to Detroit, maybe Aiden Hutchinson will help him, develop that.
He will be a big reason if they do win the trophy. He'll be a big, big reason because him and Sawyer. Is it the best edge duo in the country?
I would say so. I think they're the only duo in my top 10, I believe, when I ranked them.
Yeah,
so.
Unless Tyler Barron goes back to Tennessee, maybe. But,
or goes back to Ole Miss.
With Princely? Princely,
yeah, maybe I
take these 2 still.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, those are 2
right.
that's 2 second-round guys. But back to Tennessee, though, would be hot.
Yeah.
All the just full circle. Anyway, the best edge pair in the country. We could debate which one or the other is the better one. There's a lot of scouts who think Tuimoloau is the more talented one.
I'm thinking right now about Tyler Barron. He literally could have had an unbelievable edge duo.
Him and Gelati would have been an argument, man.
Gelati,
we didn't fit Ashton Gelati in here, but I would not be shocked.
Dude, he literally
to see it.
He had him and James Pierce Jr., then him and Princely Monmion, and then him and Ashton Gelati, and he's now again in the portal.
Oh yeah,
so frustrating. Literally 4 schools in 4 months for Tyler Barron, who is utilizing the transfer portal as much as anyone right now. So it's very interesting. Obviously, we're very interested to see where he goes because he's a great player. So he's going to be a great player next year as well. All right, you want to go to the Ravens now?
Number 30, the Baltimore Ravens. This is rough, too, because we got them going down. Or not we. Hold up. Betting lines. Betting odds.
Yes.
We don't have this. I don't have a Super Bowl prediction yet. Everybody relax.
Okay.
Baltimore Ravens at 30. The betting odds say they will lose to the Chiefs in the AFC title game.
It's the same. Lions too. Betting odds say the same thing.
Yeah, I never like that. Last year's going to happen again.
Yeah.
Now maybe with the Chiefs part it will, but it seems odd. There's going to be people hot on the Texans too, man.
Right.
Anyway, Ravens. To me, they didn't make the Super Bowl because they did not have enough receivers. And I know Odell Beckham. I think we're getting near the end here on Odell Beckham. He had 2 big games, and the rest of his play was kind of inconsistent. You just saw that Zay Flowers was their one outside threat. I like the pick of Tez Walker, absolutely. But you're talking about, again, I need 3 guys. And they play a lot of 2 tight ends, so it's maybe a little less important for them. They run the ball. You have Mark Andrews. You have Isaiah Likely. You have Zay Flowers. Like, there's maybe the 11 personnel thing doesn't apply as much to them, but I still need one more, like, premium weapon. Give me Trey Harris from Ole Miss, man. The more I watch him, I kind of like Tua Tagovailoa. There are times, best player on the field.
Yeah.
Like, just dominant. Like, I'm watching his Texas A&M tape, and I'm like, oh, this is just, I don't know what they're going to do about him. Like, seriously.
Like 3 one-handed catches, like, in a row.
Something like that.
Like 2-3 like ridiculous catches.
I think it was 200. I think it was 213 yards. Like, vertically, he's a problem. He needs to work the route running a little bit. He's a real problem vertically, and I think he's the perfect complement to Zay Flowers running whip routes and making guys miss and doing all that in the screen game underneath. They need ways to get Zay Flowers inside, working on slot guys, working on linebackers. Trey Harris is a threat, man, outside. He back shoulder, go balls, and I understand, like, Ole Miss, they run kind of a weird offense, like Lane Kiffin. He's getting deep and outside the numbers more than any team in the country, but he's talented. Like, they've got a lot of talented players, and with Quinshawn leaving for Ohio State, Trey Harris is their most talented offensive player. Would it shock me at all if he was the best receiver in the SEC this year? No, not at all.
Over Burden?
It's possible.
Yeah, with that offense too.
It's possible.
With that offense,
Harris has an element to him that's physically, he's not as big as McMillan, but he's got an element to his game that's physically dominant. There are times when he looks like, man, he's the best player on this football field. He's the best receiver in this conference. There are moments, because he had, I think it was almost 30 less targets than, say, a Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he had like 87 targets or something like that. If I'm Ole Miss, and I know they want to establish the run too, they're really good at it. I think Trey Harris, I would like to see him with like 120 target workload. Give me, what is that, 10 a game? We're talking? Okay, if they get a bolt, whatever. 10 targets a game instead of
a few playoff games too, don't you forget.
Listen,
we're gonna be on that.
We fully, I think both of us fully expect Ole Miss to make the playoff.
Absolutely.
They have so much talent. They need Jackson Dart to be just a bit better in drop back situations. But Trey Harris, I'll tell you what, if Ole Miss makes the playoffs, it's in large part because Trey Harris is a superstar.
I agree. I love that as well. I know Trevor is a little bit lower on Trey Harris when we brought him up, but I'm curious to see what Trevor thinks about him after he watches because I feel like a lot of it was based off of the early tape. I think once he watches the new tape, he might be a little bit higher.
I do agree that he's not the most diverse guy.
No, but he's a vertical guy.
But I think, like, Xavier Legette's not the most diverse guy. DK Metcalf's not the most
like Troy Franklin's not that diverse.
Troy Franklin's not that. You can win with guys who aren't diverse.
Yeah.
If they're amazing at what they do.
Right.
They can't all be Justin Jefferson, right? When it comes to the route running. Like, there's guys and look, who's the diverse guy? It's Zay Flowers.
Yeah.
I'm missing size and speed and body control down the field. Like, I love Zay, but he's what, 5'9" and $180?
Right.
Like, he's you just see. I remember the whip route he ran against the Bengals. Sorry, Eli. Where I'm like, he takes a whip route like 50 yards. Like, Zay Flowers does that. I just need a guy who can give me a vertical threat and create more space for Flowers, much like, say, a Brandon Cooks does for CeeDee Lamb. I think Trey Harris, I think he's a monster. I really do. I think there's every bit the argument by the end of the year he could be in like the top 3 receiver conversation here. I think there's a ton of, to me, there is a boatload of potential with Trey Harris in that offense as the feature guy.
I agree. I think it's pretty wide open after the top 2 receivers, and I think, he's definitely one of those candidates. All right, 31 here, San Francisco 49ers. So once again, losing to the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. They took Dominic Pooney in the 3rd round. They can keep adding to their offensive line, though, I think. So we're going to go with the 3rd tackle on the board, and I think it's a big drop off after the top 2 tackles of Will Campbell and Calvin Banks Jr., but we'll see because this guy's a lot of potential. And Jonah Savainea, and I hope I got that right. I will get it right because we're going to be talking about this guy a lot, I'm sure, in the 2025 NFL draft process. But tackle out of Arizona, we just saw an Arizona tackle go in the 1st round in Jordan Morgan. I think we'll see another one in Jonah Savainea. Some work to do as a run blocker, but he's got some intriguing tools in pass pro. So since 2022, which was his first 2 years of college football, he's a true junior. He had an 80 pass blocking grade on true pass sets, which is in the 90th percentile for offensive tackles. So I'm a big fan of him. I'm curious if he's going to play right tackle or left tackle this year. He played right tackle, obviously, with Jordan Morgan on the left side. I'm going to look it up right now and see what the depth chart says. But I'm curious if he's going to flip over this year. But anyways, I think he's a great pass blocker. Actually, he's projected to be right tackle again this year. Okay, so he'll play right tackle most likely, but could arguably be the best right tackle in the 2025 NFL draft. Again, run blocker, not a lot to work with, but it's kind of like Olu fashion in a lot of ways. And he's just got so much upside as a pass blocker. There are other tackles I think are better in college football, but they're older. Savaiinaea, I think, is just scratching his potential. So I'm a big fan of him, and I think he could very well be, and probably is the favorite to be, OT3 in the 2025 NFL draft.
I say it all the time, and I know it's only partially catching on, especially with guys. I mean, guys like Latham and Fuaga getting drafted high. Maybe it's starting to shift, but right tackles are just as important as left tackles, man. A guy like Lane Johnson or Ryan Ramczyk or Penei Sewell, like that should.
Right.
Penei Sewell.
He's the highest paid tackle in the league now. Yeah.
Penei Sewell should be the guy that breaks the theory that left tackles are better than right tackles. It's just like they're only better because lower level coaches are putting all the good ones on the left side
because of a preconceived notion.
It's not the notion that the better guy plays on the left side because he's better. He does it because the coaches just say that's where the better guy plays.
Yeah.
If he's Savaiinaea, he's like, if he's the best right tackle in the country, then he could go higher than. And it's a perfect pick for the Niners, man, who are trying to fix up the right side of their offensive line. I don't think like that stigma should exist. It really shouldn't. Like if I'm a team, if I'm a college team, I don't care. I'm just stacking tackles.
No. Yeah.
And if a guy's great on the right side for whatever reason, just leave him there.
Yeah.
And if I'm drafting, and we've seen it more recently, like Darnell Wright went in the top 10, 10th overall, 9th? 10th. They traded down a spot, right? The Jalen Carter pick. 10th overall, Fuaga
we
went
saw
14th.
Latham went 7.
Latham went 7. But even with Latham, though, it bugs me because all the talk at the Combine and everyone who interviewed him was like, hey, can you play the left side? Like, and what weirds me out about that with Tennessee is I go, you have a left tackle playing left guard.
Yeah.
So that throws me off a little when again I don't understand. Now do I think Fuaga is the third best tackle in this year's draft? Sure. But it's not at all because of
it's not because of right left side.
No, he plays on the right side. That's nonsense. We've seen this. Sewell, Lane Johnson, Ryan Ramczyk. Look, I'll take the Jets as an example. They got Tyron Smith. That's the big move. I'm telling you, getting Morgan Moses at right tackle is equally as important.
Yep.
Right? And he's maybe not like a Hall of Famer like Tyron Smith, but it's equally important. Like teams with the Bengals have been trying to find a right tackle for how long?
Eli, how long? Forever?
Rude.
So I mean, it's just seriously, but it's one of these things where, like right now, the Chiefs, they left Jawan Taylor at right tackle because he's a right tackle, right? And he didn't have the best year, but he was good when they had to turn it on, right? It's a big thing. I think we need to start looking at these tackles more equally. But this is a great pick here. You have at 31 for the 49ers, and apparently, according to the betting odds, they are going to get all the way to the end, and they're going to lose to the Chiefs again, who are favored for the first three-peat in NFL history. Where are we at on that, too? I know Eli's out on that. He's not having it.
I don't think they're going to do it, but they could.
I mean,
it's wrong to doubt them at this point. But
I mean, they got a receiver and a left tackle, and those are the two things they needed. So this very well could happen, and doubting Patrick Mahomes is a terrible bet. But anyway, 32. Let's build a narrative real quick. You want to write a story?
Do it.
Xavier Worthy, game-winning Super Bowl touchdown, however it goes against whoever, right? Three-peat. Travis Kelce's feeling like, you know what? Maybe 3's enough. Maybe I'm good, right? I got Taylor Swift. I have a boatload of money. I have all the tight end records. I'm the greatest playoff performer ever. Let's retire. Okay. And even if he doesn't, he's still what? He's coming up on 35 years old?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go tight end. Let's get 2 tight ends here in the first round. We didn't have that this year. I'm going to take Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame as the heir apparent to Travis Kelce. Look, when he got hurt, when he tore his ACL last year, Notre Dame's offense got substantially worse. He was Estime. We could argue about Estime. I would argue Evans was the key to their offense. The threat he gave them up the seam with the big body. He might not be quite as fast as Colston Loveland, But I think there actually is a world if Evans comes back 100% and he has like a standout, just John Mackey Award season. I think he could be the first tight end off the board. I think he's talented enough to do it. The ACL really sucks because the year he was having, you mentioned it yesterday, I think, he could have taken the Mackey from Bowers the year he was having. He had an 83.7 receiving grade. I think he might have ended up in the top 10 in yards anyway. Mitchell Evans is super talented. He's a seam threat. He's a good route runner. He's a big body who's going to know how to block down there at Notre Dame. This is a pick for me that I would really think about. And the Chiefs could always go like trench depth or keep finding defensive backs because Brett Veach does it every year, or another linebacker or whatever. But I just go eventually here, we need to find the succession plan for Kelsey, right? Unless we're going to spread it out and get crazy at receiver, which we could too. You got Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice and everything else out there. But if Andy Reid loves his tight, he even took Jared Wiley yesterday. And that was a good pick, but I don't see Jared Wiley as like the guy, right? I think he's a solid move guy. I think he could do some things where Mitchell Evans would be like that dude for me. So I'm taking Travis Kelce's successor out of Notre Dame.
I love it. So that wraps up the way too early 2025 NFL mock draft. And actually, I looked it up right now. There's actually a Reddit thread going talking about the way too early mock draft from last year that PFF had. And a lot of people were saying how good it was. And the author of that mock draft was Max Chadwick, actually.
It was. Without me, I might ruin you this
So
year.
let's actually, this will be a fun thing real quick. Let's go look back, and I'm just going to count how many first rounders. So we got Caleb number 1, got that. Marvin number 2, Alt number 3, Bowers number 4, Drake May number 5, Olu 6. Kool-Aid did not go first round, that's 1. Mecca Buka 2. Jeremiah Trotters 3. Oh, Johnny Newton's 4. BS.
I'm not sure if you can count at Buka because he didn't declare.
Yeah, I don't know.
You can't count that
He wouldn't have gone first round. He wouldn't have gone
No,
first
he
round.
probably wouldn't have.
I don't know, but that changes everything because he got injured. I don't think you can count that against you.
No, I'm just saying who did not go first round this year is what I'm trying to say.
I guess, if he's just going straight out of 32
I guess, sure.
Max is kind
But
of,
I'm not going to count that against you.
Kalen King notably did not go first round.
Yeah, that one, that's a few strikes.
That's 5. That is 5. Cooper DeJean 6. BS again. Leonard Taylor notably did not get drafted.
Jets signed him though.
Did not get drafted.
Jets signed
7.
him. Trevor was pointing out the Jets as a fit, and they signed him immediately after the draft.
Jatavion Sanders is 8. JT Tuimoloau is 9. Quinn Ewers is 10. This is back-to-back years now. Quinn Ewers
killing me.
Denzel Burke is 11. Michael Hall Jr. 12. Mason Smith 13. Cooper Beebe 14. But I feel like we shouldn't count it because I had a mock to the Dallas Cowboys, who actually did take him.
On that, I think that should be fine.
Okay, but if we're doing that, we shouldn't count the guys who didn't declare.
Maybe. Okay. All right.
We're gonna write down the rules for this one.
What was that?
Because realistically,
what did I just say? 15, right?
Something like that.
15 Cooper Beebe, 16 Cam Kitchens, not great. Kalen Bullock 17.
Should have faked an injury.
Jonah Monheim 18. Kingsley Suamataia 19. So 19 or something like that.
That's not bad.
Not bad. And how about this? They're number 32 overall, Kansas City Chiefs, Rome Odunze. Can you freaking imagine? Can you?
No, I would just stop. I probably just wouldn't watch the NFL.
But hey,
I'd stop watching football.
I think it's pretty solid, man. I think it's pretty solid. Now, I will say, the top of this draft in 2024 was pretty easy. It was like, okay, Caleb, Marvin, Alt, like Bowers, like Drake May. We knew.
Well, was it? Yeah, but was it?
This one's going to be more volatile. I think 2025 is going to be a little more volatile.
This year, to me, there was a clear top 8 of, like, those are the top 8 guys in this draft.
Yeah.
Right? You had the 3 quarterbacks, the 3 receivers, and Joe Alt and Brock Bowers. And Brock Bowers only doesn't go in the top 8 because of the position. But those are the 8 best players in the draft. It's funky that they're all offensive, or we're back to talking about defensive guys. 4 of our top 5? 4 of our top 7. 5 out of 8. 5 of our top 8 guys are defensive guys in this first mock. So it's going to swing
6
back.
of 10, yeah.
We are not going to get the first 15, 14 offensive players.
No, it's flipping. It's flipping.
It's going to get back to a more balanced thing. So I think evaluators are going to have a fun time this year getting back to, okay, this is a really good safety class.
Yep.
Okay, there's some hardcore corners. The D tackles are aliens in this draft. There's a deep edge group. I don't know, other than Pierce, we're projecting a little bit with Scourton. Maybe a bit. Let's see him in the SEC. Let's see him against Will Campbell, right? Something like that. The edge class is deep.
Yeah,
it's deep.
Who do you not feel? So obviously the later guys you don't feel great about because we took them later. Maybe in the top 15, is there anyone that you're like is volatile? Like I could see this guy not ending up being a top. I don't know.
Not end up being a top 15 pick,
or like just a first rounder. Maybe Kevin Winston.
Yeah, it'd have to be the safety.
Yeah, Kevin Winston Jr.
Well,
Malachi Starks I feel good about.
And he's at number 15. So that's a positional value thing. I think I would have like volatility questions maybe on Burden.
Yeah, but I feel like he's going to be a first rounder.
And he's not the biggest dude. He'll be are you talking about dropping out of the first round?
Yeah.
Or out of the top 15?
Maybe Scourton just doesn't.
Scourton, if he doesn't adjust well to the SEC.
Is there a hot take of maybe it's Travis if the NFL doesn't know what to do with him?
I think his ability as a corner alone is going to get him. No,
he's too athletic. He's almost like.
You want a weird one?
Huh.
Carson Beck.
Yeah.
Because he's very safe to project, but he's also
him and Shedeur, honestly.
But he's also B+ or A- arm strength. There is not much movement there. The lack of athleticism on Carson Beck is gonna because people say it with Michael Penix. But he reportedly ran something close to a 4.4. Michael Penix is an athlete, and he's just an absolutely elite processor, right? So maybe Penix is the argument, but if Carson Beck came out in this draft among the first-round guys, he's the least athletic of the bunch, and it's really not close.
Yeah.
So I think you just wonder going forward with the way the game is going with the a mobile quarterback now is almost a requirement. Even Joe Burrow is a good improviser, and Beck I don't even think had like Shedeur to me improvises in a similar way that Burrow does, where he's rolling to throw for the most part, and if he sees the chains, then he'll go get it. But it's not an elite athlete. Carson Beck, man, there's not a boatload of athleticism to him. He has to throw. He's got a low time to throw. He gets rid of the football. I could see a scenario where maybe a team just thinks of him as a better version of a stronger armed version of Mac Jones.
Yeah, I can see that as well.
It's the one thing I would question with Beck is the ceiling. Is he's one of these guys, he has to be perfect from the pocket. So like for me, I would really think long and hard about Shedeur being QB1 and it's just that right now, and even Shedeur, like
maybe Colorado doesn't allow him to be that good because the offensive line still stinks.
That's true also. I mean, and then you're just talking about his whole situation with Dion picking out cities or whatever. Now it's hard for us. Like we don't know that situation, so to drop him down based on that, I think is nonsense.
No, it's pure on field.
But I think this top
and real quick, who do you feel really good about being like, yeah, that guy's gonna be tough? Like Mason Graham, I think is like guaranteed. Like unless something tragic happens injury wise.
I think the more I think about this, I think Graham is the safest pick in the draft.
Banks. I feel like Banks, even more so than Campbell. I feel really good about him.
I feel good about both of them. The pass protection.
Walker's too much of an alien to be falling out.
I mean, I think anybody in the top 10 to 12 here is gonna.
Ben Morrison and Will Johnson, maybe if they because how volatile cornerback play is, maybe if they struggle. Like if they have a Kalen King type year,
I feel safe about Will Johnson because I got 2 years of data on him. Who do I feel? Man, I'm a Ted McMillan guy.
Yeah,
Tetero McMillan. There's not another receiver in the country like him right now.
All right. That's what we got for 2025 NFL Mock Draft. I'm sure this is a very long episode. I'm not sure quite how long it was. So very appreciative of you guys and very appreciative of Eli back there who has been putting in hours this weekend. I mean, he's been working his ass off. So very appreciative of Eli to be back there pushing all the right buttons for us. Or maybe pushing the wrong buttons. Maybe we've been on mute this whole time and just have not done an episode. So
I actually didn't record any of this.
He would. I think he would do that too.
Eli, if you want, dude, we have the capabilities of doing a 7-round mock draft 2025 right now. If you're up
you guys keep going. I'm gonna go home.
Okay. That's what we got for our way too early 2025 NFL mock draft. And because draft season is over, Dalton, we can go back to being the PFF college football show.
It's like Happy New Year.
We can go back to being the PFF college football show. Not to say I don't love talking NFL draft, my favorite event of the year. But my God, am I sick of talking about the Caleb Williams, Drake May. We can move on to college football, talk some college football for next year. So be on the lookout for more college football content, rankings, maybe some interviews as well coming down the pipeline, and just talking about the 2024 college football season. It's going to be brand new in a lot of ways. Obviously, realignment is huge this year. Transfer portal stuff, a lot of coaches. 12-team playoff
I'm
is
all
good.
the way in on a 12-team playoff.
If you think our way too early mock drafts looks bad, wait until we do our playoff predictions. We have to predict 12 teams to make the playoffs. It's going to look disastrous next year.
There's going to be some hot ones.
It's going to look terrible. But we cannot wait to look terrible with all of you guys. So make sure to subscribe to the channel. We're going to do some more 2025 NFL draft stuff as well. And yeah, we can't wait for this upcoming offseason now. Finally getting back to college football. So for producer Eli back there, for Dalton Wassman, I'm Max Chadwick. We'll see you guys next time.